Okay, I will try to finish the video in this one. Intruders! What are those? We are in the middle of dinner. I was starting to wonder whether the new arrivals had mistaken this for a training session when several offensive magic tools rained down on the battlefield. This was an attack. No two ways about it. The apprentice knights raised their gatelle and made shields above their heads to protect themselves. The figures who swooped down into the arena weren't just from a single duchy. Among them were orange and dark purple capes, all armed and armored. They came for a fight. The Saint of Ehrenfest belongs to the victor, one of the intruders announced. We won't let Dunkelfelger have her. How dare you interfere, Lustelot roared, furious beyond words that our game was being interrupted. His comrades shared in his outrage. They gripped their weapons and shot up into the sky on their high beasts. Have you forgotten that your previous union of middle and lesser-ranked duchies failed to even scratch us? So I'm guessing these are some of the people that had lost to them before in the game of dinner because they wanted to participate in the research? The intruders' bombardment continued. It was impossible to tell what they were thinking or how much they had prepared. We also couldn't predict whether Dunkelfelger would immediately return to attacking us after stomping them. For that reason, Ehrenfest returned to base, I called. Bring the wounded with you. Healing comes first. The battle against Dunkelfelger had taken a toll on our apprentice knights. Some were laying on the battlefield unable to move. Helping them took priority over dealing with the intruders. Besides, we weren't much of a fighting threat at the present moment. In response to my call, my apprentice knights started returning to the safety of our shields. Those who were able to move freely retrieved those who were not. Judith was brought in as well, still restrained. The bands around her could only be cut by someone with more mana than their caster. I swiftly used my messer to free her. I'm so sorry, Judith said. That can come later, I replied, interrupting her. For now, hurry to make sure no wounded have been left behind. Her violet eyes, which had just moments ago been stripped of their luster, suddenly lit up again. Any thoughts of her shortcomings had been pushed aside now that she had a job to do. After sharply voicing her acknowledgement, she flourished her cape and went off on her high beast. It wasn't long before Wilfred returned as well, though he wasn't alone. Rosamund, can we shield Lady Hannelore here too? He asked. Her own duchy abandoned her in their base. You are more than welcome here, Lady Hannelore, I replied. What were your knights thinking leaving an Archduke Canada on her own? Your safety clearly comes before dealing with the intruders. I glared up at the blue cape, still dealing with the rain of magic tools, all the while making space for Wilfred and Hannelore. This must be enough to warrant putting our game on hold, Wilfred said. We can't keep up like this. I expect that Dunkelfelger intends to continue the match after crushing them, but you are right, we are in no position for that. We have used most of our magic tools and consumed too many of our rejuvenation potions. I cast Strykolben to turn my staff into Flutrain's staff and then spoke the prayer necessary to heal everyone in the shield at once. May Hellschmier's healing be granted. A pillar of green light shot up into the sky, but by now this was a familiar sight for Dunkelfelgers and our own apprentice knights. But not for our intruders. They immediately began to stir. Oh, this is probably going to be a distraction for them. After analyzing our situation with cool composure, I turned to those safely inside our shield. Brunhilde was finally regaining consciousness. She shakily returned to her feet, grimacing at the dirt and grass clinging to her hair, then swiftly cleaned herself with washing. Oh, right. Nobles don't brush themselves off with their hands. In mere seconds, Brunhilde was looking like her usual self again, carrying herself so gracefully that it was hard to believe there was a battle raging around us. Once again, it was clear that she was the superior noblewoman and that my instincts betrayed my absolute lack of elegance. All of a sudden, for the briefest moment, my vision began to flicker. What? It really had only lasted for an instant, but the message was loud and clear. My body was protesting the way I was mistreating it. I wouldn't be able to cling to consciousness for too much longer. We needed to end this chaos as soon as possible. I moved to address the apprentice knights. They had been healed, but their mana hadn't yet recovered. Everyone used their rejuvenation potions, I said, then checked to see how many magic tools and potions remained, and... My instructions were cut short by a sudden no from the audience, followed shortly thereafter by high-pitched screams. I turned to the source of the commotion and saw one of Dunkelfelger's apprentice knights without their high beasts plummeting toward the ground unconscious. He struck the earth with a dull thud, then remained eerily still. I must help him, I shouted. Guards! Upon seeing me touch the face stone from my pandabus, Judith instantly created her shield. Lenore produced and mounted her own high beast, then looked around and started scolding the guard knights who had yet to spring into action. Matthias, Lorenz, do not idle. I climbed into Lessie, then made my way over to the unconscious knight. Ideally, I wanted to bring him into Shutsaria's shield. Face stone armor offered a lot of protection against sudden impacts, but he had fallen from a great height. He had probably taken a blow to the head, and moving him in that state would be dangerous. Lady Rosamund, you would risk your safety to help a Dunkelfelger apprentice? Of course, there's a wounded person before me, someone I can save. After reaching the knight, I climbed out of my high beast and used my ring to grant him Hailshmir's healing, with my own knights guarding me with their shields, of course. A small green light rained down on him, at which point Lorenz muttered, "Someone tell me this isn't happening." Not just Lorenz, but every single one of my guard knights was gazing skyward. I tried to follow their eyes, and that was when I realized even the Dunkelfelger students here to spectate our game were starting to join the free-for-all. Give me a break, Matthias sighed, almost sounding fearful. Those from Dunkelfelger can't hold their own, sure. But what if the rest of the audience gets dragged into the fight? No sooner had the words left his mouth than the intruders' offensive magic tools started targeting the spectator seats. They're not part of this, I shouted. Dunkelfelger had scholars and attendants of the sword who were capable of protecting themselves. In fact, most of them had already created shields, but the Ehrenfest spectators weren't combatants. Some were exhausted apprentice scholars who had pushed themselves to their limit brewing magic tools. Others were apprentice attendants who knew how to make shields, but didn't have enough combat training to use them. And still others were the younger apprentice knights who knew a bit about fighting but hadn't been able to play Ditter. And of course, it was also Charlotte, our third Archduke candidate. "Charlotte," I cried, but just as I was getting hysterical, Wolfrey started giving out orders from within the shield. "All recovered apprentice knights move to protect our duchy spectators. Bring them here. Those who have yet to recover stay here and guard our base." Understood. The apprentice knights who were battle-ready mounted their high beasts and rushed to the stands with their shields in hand. I told myself that everything was going to be okay, that our non-combatants would be much easier to protect once they were inside Susaria's shield. I focused on healing the wounded person in front of me. He started to recover. The unconscious apprentice knight began to murmur. He came to, then leaped to his feet so suddenly that it startled me. "You've been unconscious for some time," I said, tugging on his cape. "You need to rest, and you need not worry," he interjected. "Your saintly blessing has healed my wounds. I thank you from the bottom of my heart." He knelt to show his appreciation, then climbed into his high beast and returned to the sky. On the one hand, I was glad that he was better, but on the other, I was a little dazed. He was so eager to leave the safety of our shield and return to battle that I had to wonder whether he had needed healing in the first place. As I watched his retreating back, my vision flickered again. This time, everything had turned monochrome like the world had been sapped of all color. It was probably the result of my rampant mana usage, on top of drinking 2 different kinds of rejuvenation potions back to back. "You do not look well," Lenore said to me. "Let us return to the shield, right of me." She picked me up and started toward our base, her expression stiff. "Do you need a rejuvenate?" "No, I have already consumed too many." Lenore held me a little closer. Abandoning the fight and taking me back to the dormitory wasn't an option. Charlotte and the other non-combatants were being taken to our base, and their safety depended on Shutsaria's shield. We returned to find that Wilfred was trying to stop the free-for-all from going on above us by any means necessary. "Lady Hannelore, it seems inevitable that this game of Ditter is going to be nullified," he said. "Can you ease everyone's fighting spirit with the ritual of the goddess of oceans?" "Indeed," she replied, having been watching the sky with a sorrowful expression. "I see no issue with that. This game is as good as over." "In that case, Lady Hannelore, while you are performing the ritual, we will produce a large-scale wash-in to ensure that no attacks interrupt you. Isidore, Brunhilde, your mana has recovered, right?" He guided Isidore to fetch the support magic tool that Hartman had made for us based on Clarissa's research, then asked some of the nearby knights to start guarding Hannelore. The next thing we knew, there was a loud metallic clang. "Heap, what?" Wolverine and I cried out in surprise, while the surrounding apprentice knights all readied themselves and stared upward. Even the knights who had been fighting in the sky stopped and straightened their backs. "Attention!" boomed Roffin's voice, echoing throughout the arena. "Why in this is the Sovereign Knight's order here at the Royal Academy? And interfering with the game of Ditter of all things. We didn't ask you to come, and we've confirmed via ordinance that the royal family didn't either." His outrage was unmistakable, and indeed a closer inspection revealed that there were several black capes among the rainbow that made up our intruders. I thought that interfering with one of the Dunkelfelger's Ditter games was a pretty bold move, but they evidently had the support of the Sovereign Knight's order. The royal family was concerned about Dunkelfelger potentially taking the Saint of Ehrenfest, one of the Black Cape Knights explained, his voice commanding. Dealing with such concerns is the duty of the Sovereign Knight's order. Knights from the lesser and middle duchies that had evidently been rallied into joining the battle voiced their agreement. "This is what the royal family wants. If we win, we obtain the Saint of Ehrenfest. You would attack on such flimsy basis without a royal decree," Roffin yelled in complete disbelief. "This is clearly abnormal." "The Sovereign Knight's order serves the Zent himself," the Black Cape Knight declared. "We work to ease his distress. We eliminate all those who oppose him, and that includes you." At once, the overconfident knight moved to strike Roffin. The very sight of a Sovereign Knight attacking a professor of the Royal Academy, someone who had similarly moved to the sovereignty and wore the same black cape, had stunned all of us. Ruffin alone was lucid. He dodged the attack, then turned to the evading students. Everyone stand down at once. I've personally confirmed that this attack is not part of a royal decree. If you support the Sovereign Knight's order knowing this, then you will not be protected. Flee before the royal family arrives. It was clear now that the attackers weren't acting on behalf of the royal family and will most likely be punished for their actions. Upon hearing this, the invading apprentice knights from Middle and Lesser Duchies scattered like baby spiders, clearing the sky in an instant. All that remained were 3 Black Caped Sovereign Knights and the Blue Capes of Dunkelfelder. Interrupting dinner without a royal decree is unprecedented behavior, Lancelot shouted. Bind them at once. Have them explain themselves before the Zent. Dunkelfelder's apprentice knights acted without hesitation, fighting to capture the Black Caped Knights. But the Sovereign Knights Order was made up of the country's very best, those who had been allowed to move to the sovereignty after having their skills recognized. Against such capable opponents, not even Dunkelfelder's apprentices stood a chance. In addition to all this, to restrain someone with a staff, one needed to have more mana than the person being captured. The only person here able to maintain the Rogue Knights was Lestalot, an Archduke candidate approaching adulthood. He waited for one of the knights to be cornered by Roffin, and several of the apprentices then swiftly bound him with light. Lady Rosamund, could you not bind them too? Hannelore asked. Unfortunately, that would require me to get closer. I also don't have the mana to spare, since I need to maintain Shutsaria's shield. There was no reason for anyone to expect anything of me at this point. I might not have been able to help if my mana were replenished. But right now I couldn't even bear to keep focusing on our shield. I was starting to feel uncomfortably nauseous, like I might hurl at any moment. To be frank, I didn't want to expand to drop more mana. And as I glared up at the sky, several more Black Capes arrived. Their uniform movements were no doubt those of the Sovereign Knights Order. I tensed up on instinct, thinking that perhaps they were in reinforcements. I came here at once upon receiving Roffin's ordinance, and what do I see? Came Anastasia's voice from among the new arrivals. What is the meaning of this? It seemed that the intruders really had been acting without orders from the royal family. Anastasius bound the 2 remaining rogue Black Capes, who had since been cornered, without even breaking a sweat. That was a prince for you. He had tons of mana. I wish to hear your cases, Anastasius said. Archduke candidates of Dunkelfelder and Ehrenfest, stay here with your retainers and dormitory supervisors. Everyone else, disperse. I would have rather he scheduled this for another day, but he had received an urgent summons from Roffin and wanted to get a clear picture of what had taken place here. Anastasius' appearance had brought the battle to an immediate end, which was a relief, but at the same time, the calmer atmosphere allowed my weariness to surge. I tried getting rid of Shutsaria's shield, dispersing the last thing that was draining my mana, but doing that just made me feel worse. Nothing was working to make me feel better. Collapsing in front of the royal family isn't good, right? What should I do? "Milady," Riarda shouted the moment she saw me, having come down with Charlotte and the others. She raced over and said, "Oh, there is death on your face. We must return to the dormitory at once. Leave things here to Wilfried and Lady Charlotte." "But Prince Anastasius ordered me to stay. Leaving now would mean defying an order from the royal family." Riarda shook her head, looking stern. Collapsing in front of the royal family once again would be even worse. Let us explain our reasoning first, then return. At her prompting, I asked Anastasius if we could return to our dormitory. He grimaced the moment he saw me, as if recalling an unpleasant memory of some kind, then shooed me away. Yep, he is remembering when you collapsed before. "I can tell from looking at you that you are unwell," he said. "Hurry back to your dormitory." "I thank you. Your magnanimous heart fills me with gratitude," I replied, kneeling while holding back the urge to vomit. Anastasius gave an even more irritated look. "Someone take her away already." Riarda picked me up at once. "Lenore, Matthias, Brunhilde, Roderick. Between you, you witnessed the game from the battlefield, our shield in the stand. Speak to Prince Anastasius in my stead, I ordered while being carried away. I could see Anastasius' exasperated expression from over Riarda's shoulder. Upon our return to the dormitory, Riarda launched into a scolding. "I saw from above you used more than the agreed number of rejuvenation potions, didn't you? I understand that you couldn't afford to lose, but you must be more careful. The apprentice knights can depend on your healing and their rejuvenation potions. You can only depend on the latter. And even then, there are limits to how many you can consume." The apprentice knights could chug several rejuvenation potions, since they found even the weaker versions to be plenty effective. In contrast, I was limited to using Ferdinand brand potions. Anything less did effectively nothing to replenish my mana. On top of that, I could only drink so many in quick succession, as too many potions would make me feel sick. "As you have likely drunk more rejuvenation potions than your body can manage, I cannot allow you to drink any more," Riarda concluded. "All you can do now is rest until your symptoms go away." Riarda and Lazletta quickly helped me to get changed, then forced me into bed. I slowly shut my eyes at last. After such an exhausting day, I was able to get some rest. The epilogue. At about the same time that Rosamund was carried away by her head attendant, the students in the audience began filtering out as well. Left behind were the other Archduke candidates, their retainers, and the dormitory supervisors. Hannelore was still at Ehrenfest's base, where Shizaria's shield previously stood, waiting among a sea of ochre capes. She could only watch as Rosemine slowly disappeared from view. To think she would end up in such a state. Just how far was she pushing herself during our game? Rosemine's sickly pallor was a stark contrast to the radiance she had exuded when facing down Lestalot just moments prior, or when defending against the attacks of the entire Sovereign Knights Order. Now she looked ashen, on the verge of passing out. Had she been maintaining her shield through sheer willpower? Hannelore let out an awed sigh at the thought. No matter how you approach it, Lady Rosemine needed healing so much more than her apprentices she helped. Once the noisy crowd had dispersed, the only ones who remained were those whom Anastasius had asked to stay. They formed a triangle with black, blue, and ochre cape corners, and the dormitory supervisors stepped forward as representatives. The 3 infiltrators, all tightly bound, were tossed into the center. "Hannelore, you should be over here," Lestalot called out, signaling for her to return with a quick jerk of his thumb. It was only then that Hannelore noticed everyone standing in groups. In her confusion, she alone had ended up with the wrong duchy. Wilfred attempted to ease her panic. "Don't worry, Lady Hannelore. Lord Lestalot will understand that you only came to us and entered Shizaria's shield to escape the danger." Despite those kind words, Hannelore offered only a polite smile in response. Such a weak excuse simply wouldn't hold water. She had willingly left Dunkelfelder's base and made her duchy lose as a result. Yep. They lost. They only lost because of that. If she hadn't done that, they probably would have won. No, they would have won because she left her base after that. Lestalot's decision to lead the apprentice knights to chase off the intruders had meant that Hannelore was all alone in their base. As her team's treasure, she was unable to move. Thankfully, the abundance of mana she wielded as an Archduke meant she could block any attack with a full-powered Getelt. She had also been given offensive magic tools to chase away any enemies who attempted to approach. It was her duty to watch the battle from afar and play defensively, so when the invading duchies of attack magic started raining down from the sky, she produced her Getelt and took cover in its shadow. "Lady Hannelore," Wilfrid shouted as he flew over to her. He was carrying a shield of his own, which he was using to block the attacks coming from above. Hannelore slowly reached down and touched one of the many magic tools she had with her. "It's too dangerous for you to be here without any guards," Wilfrid continued. "Come to Ehrenfest. You'll be safer inside Rosemine's shield." Hannelore's eyes widened. To her surprise, Wilfrid wasn't here to encourage her to resign. He was genuinely worried about her, showing no ulterior motive. Even so, she shook her head. "But I cannot leave this base. Eep!" Before she finished her response, Wilfrid stopped an attack from the sky with his shield, letting out a grunt of exertion. He then gave Hannelore a reassuring smile, extending a hand to her, and said, "I will not say this if our battle were still only between our 2 duchies. However, we now have intruders to deal with, and our game can't continue after such an interruption. Please, Lady Hannelore, think of your safety above all else." She gazed up at the blue capes who were fighting to keep the intruders of so many duchies from reaching the ground. They were clearly furious about their game being interrupted, and were working their hardest to remove the sudden threat. The bombardment of magic tools made it clear the invaders' objective wasn't to join the dinner game. Their only focus was stopping Dunkelfelder from attaining the Saint of Ehrenfest. A glance over at Roffin was enough to see that he was entirely preoccupied with their unwanted guests. He hadn't announced that the game was cancelled or even paused. Just by looking at Wilfrid, by staring into his deep green eyes and seeing his outstretched hand, Hannelore could tell that he cared more about her safety than any game of dinner. He was wielding a shield and nothing more. There was no weapons or magic tools in his hands. "If our game is cancelled, then we can simply resume it some other time," he said. "But if you get hurt, the consequences could be devastating." Hannelore knew that she could easily blow Wilfrid away using the offensive magic tools she had been given. They were powerful enough to pose a genuine risk to anyone on the receiving end of one. Yet Wilfrid didn't seem concerned about that in the slightest. "His only thoughts are about my safety. As an Archduke candidate raised in the Duchy of Warfare, Hannelore seldom had people offer to protect her. She was expected to lead her guard knights in the battle, charging straight at danger rather than letting it come to her. And whenever her efforts fell short, she was scolded for not being strong enough. All things considered, Hannelore considered herself a bit of a failure. But here was Wilfrid trying to keep her safe. Such a thing had never happened to her before, and she wasn't being chastised either. Her heart was racing before she realized it, and when she gazed into his straightforward eyes, she felt strangely fuzzy inside. Think she's starting to fall? Starting to get a crush on him. "Come with me," he said. "It's much safer inside Rosemine's shield." Hannelore stood up. She dispelled her shield, willingly left her base, and took the hand being offered to her. The two then exchanged relieved smiles. "Very well," she said. "I shall go to Ehrenfest." By deciding to leave her base and go with Wilfrid, Handler had cost her duchy the game. While attacks rained down from above and Lestat led the apprentice knights into battle against the intruders, she had quietly gone to Ehrenfest for safety. Handler didn't regret her choice or her actions, but the thought of everyone being so angry at her made her feet feel so much heavier. She was terrified about what might happen next. I've made my bed, I must now lie in it. After encouraging herself as best she could, Handler moved to join the others from her duchy. As an Archduke candidate, she needed to stand beside Lestat and Raffen in the front row. Her brother glared at her, but he couldn't scold her in front of the royal family. That alone was a silver lining. Once everyone was in neat rows and kneeling before the royal family, Anastasius demanded an explanation of the dinner game. Raffen and Herscher answered, which only made the prince furrow his brow. A simple timeline of events was hard to understand in isolation. This was no normal game of dinner, after all. Gambling one's engagement on a game of dinner in the Royal Academy's grounds wasn't normal, nor was underage Archduke candidates leading apprentice knights. And the absurdities didn't stop there. Hannelore had gotten wrapped up in things even without Wilfrid proposing to her. Then members of the Sovereign Knights Order had determined it necessary to interfere. The whole situation was peculiar. Now, what caused this mess in the first place? Lestat. Lestat's the one who caused it, because he's the one who proposed, and then the whole bride-taking dinner started. Anastasius finally asked, irritated. You have my sincerest apologies, Wilfrid replied without hesitation. Anastasius raised an eyebrow, slightly troubled to have received a sorry rather than an answer. Hannelore noticed this and turned back to Wilfrid. Ehrenfest looked sick with anxiety about being addressed by the royal family. They were so different from her brother, Lestat, who had merely clicked his tongue. Oh, but wait! Hannelore remembered seeing Rosamund in the royal family's villa. Back then, Rosamund hadn't looked at all shaken about being in the presence of royalty. In fact, she had even displayed the courage to assert her own opinion without faltering. Just watching her had given Hannelore chills. But compared to how the heirs from Ehrenfest were acting now, for the first time she understood why her brother had said that Rosamund was a cut above the others in her duchy. That side of Lady Rosamund certainly reminds me of my brother. Perhaps they are more alike than I originally thought. Lestat may have been kneeling before Anastasius, but he wasn't looking down at the ground. Instead, he was looking at the prince square in the face, straight in his eyes, showing that he had no intention of backing down. I also have a question, Lestat said. Why are you here, Prince Anastasius? Should matters of the Royal Academy not fall to Prince Hildebrand? In essence, Lestat was refusing to answer to anyone but the person in charge. He was right that Anastasius had now received the king's permission to oversee the Royal Academy. In fact, one could argue he was overstepping the bounds of his authority simply by being here. This was far from Lestat doing Hildebrand a favor, however. His true intention was to bring forth the younger royal who could who would be easier to manipulate. No, brother, this is not what you want. After interacting with Hildebrand during their tea party and at the Underground Archive, Hannelore had sensed that the younger prince admired and perhaps even loved Rosamund. Oh, dear. Yeah, this could get awkward. This could get awkward very, very quickly. Having him arbitrate a game of dinner intended to decide his first crush's future husband would only cause problems. Definitely. Go sit down and be quiet! Hannelore frantically shook her head, silently imploring Anastasius to disregard her brother's demand. The prince met her gaze, then gave a curt nod, his arms crossed. Hildebrand will find this incident troublesome to deal with, Anastasius said. The Zent has instructed that I temporarily take his place. Lestat sniffed dismissively, then adopted the broad smile he used when socializing. In that case, I would also like to know the meaning behind this mess. We went through all the procedures necessary to use these grounds for dinner. He glared at one of the restrained knights. For what folly did the Sovereign Knights Order interfere with our first holy game? It was a very impolite way of speaking to a royal, disrespectful even, but Lestat was justified in his anger. The Sovereign Knights Order had tempted middle and lesser duchies into interfering with the game of dinner, all so that Rosamund would not end up in Dunkelfelger's hands. It was the Sovereign Knight's order that caused problems, not us, Lestalot continued. I intend to petition the king for an explanation as to why our game was interrupted, an admission that he failed to keep his knights under control, and a guarantee that these 3 rogues will receive the strictest punishments. What? Lord Lestalot, what are you saying? This exclamation came not from Anastasius, but from Wilfrid. Ehrenfest appeared more shocked than anyone else. Lestalot blinked as if confused. What issue do you have with that? If any other knight's order acted in this manner, their Archduke would be reprimanded for mismanaging them. In the case of the Sovereign Knight's order, the royal family is responsible. What issue? Wilfrid repeated. I mean to say we do not need to treat this so serious what we do. They defile the holy game of dinner, one that would have decided the fate of our Archduke candidates. Now that they prayed to the gods and received blessings before playing dinner, those from Dunkelfelder had started to deify the sport more than before. Interfering with the game being offered to the gods was equivalent to obstructing a religious ceremony or a dedication whirl. This is strange. Do those of Ehrenfest not consider it disrespectful to the gods for a religious ceremony to have been interrupted? Well, yes, they do. They just don't think of dinner as a religious ceremony. As far as Hannelore could tell from Rosamund's rituals in the Royal Academy, Ehrenfest performed religious ceremonies considerably more often than Dunkelfelder. The duchy was closer to the gods and more accustomed to receiving divine protections and blessings, yet its representatives didn't seem at all annoyed about the interruption. Even though they respected the gods more than the royal family did, they were being unusually calm. Lestalot continued, can you explain why none of you seem at all outraged about this? I seem to recall that your apprentice knights made no effort to disperse the intruders. We had many wounded. It is only obvious that we were prioritizing healing them and evacuating the non-combatants. Rather, I think you should explain how you could leave Lady Hannelore in such a dangerous place to... Enough, both of you, Anastasia said, stepping in between the discussion before the discussion becoming an argument. He then faced down Lestalot with a piercing stare. Indeed, these knights acted without an order from the royal family, and we intend to question them as to why. However, Lestalot, I also have a question for you. As you said, you went through the proper channels for your game of dinner, but I remember your document describing it as the kind played during training. There was no mention of the outcome deciding the engagements of any Archduke candidates. Rosamund's engagement to Wilfrid already has the king's approval, so it seems to me that you used underhanded means to make this happen. Am I correct? Ooh, he did. Wow. You got to explain that to your dang boss. When requesting the use of the training grounds, one could get approval simply by writing that it was for dinner. There was no need to specify the kind of dinner or the reason it was being played. This was news to Hannelore, but Lestalot had apparently exploited this loophole to achieve something that was otherwise unprecedented. Lestalot shook his head. I thought that you, of all people, would understand my feelings, Prince Anastasius. After all, you employed all manner of schemes to obtain your own Geduld. Please, no. It's true, but saying that is so impertinent. So essentially, he's admitting that he is in love with Rosamund like Anastasius was with Eglantine. You just admitted it in front of everybody! Holy shit! Under normal circumstances, by the king's decree, Eglantine's chosen partner should have become the next king. Lestalot was protesting criticism from the prince who had done everything in his power to overturn that declaration. Hannelore felt an uncomfortable pang in her stomach. She didn't want to be next to her brother right now. I can understand the desire to obtain her Geduld, but trying to decide Archduke candidate's fate through dinner of all things is outright unthinkable, and without even allowing the Archdukes to discuss matters first. Oh, are you looking down on dinner by chance, Princess Anastasius? Lestalot asked, his voice getting sharper. Uh-oh. 2 years ago, Rosamund's schemes had caused a lot of excitement, and those feelings had only continued to build when Dunkelfelder's history was shared a year later. This year, with the dinner story and the ritual to obtain true blessings, those from Dunkelfelder had come to appreciate and even worship dinner more than ever before, which is nuts. Anastasius was understandably oblivious to their private affairs, but he immediately realized that his words had caused offense to someone with very good reason to criticize the Sovereign Knight's order. No, that is far from my intention, he said. However, if you wish to redo your game that was disrupted by the Sovereign Knight's order, then I would ask that the Obs of both duchies be allowed to decide the terms themselves. A rematch would be more disrespectful to dinner and the gods than anything else, Lestalot replied flatly. We cannot overturn the results of a game played with divine blessings, nor do I intend to. Hold on, Wilfrid said. We could not possibly consider our game valid after what happened. But the results are clear. Hannelore left our base of her own will. Yes, to escape danger. I invited her into Cesario Shield for her own safety. At first she refused, and... Silence. The match was decided the moment our treasure left our base. Dunkelfelder lost. Ehrenfest won. I will not tolerate any further protests. After saying his piece, Lestalot glanced over at Handler, his eyes narrowed slightly in what might have been a glare. His expression indicated that he wanted to demand answers from her, to know why she had chosen to leave their base, but was desperately suppressing the urge. Handler averted her gaze, trying to escape her brother's wrath. It wasn't long before her eyes wandered to Wilfred. He was pale-faced, doubtless overcome with guilt. After all, he had assured Handler that they would be repeating the match. Prince Anastasius, we do not dispute the results of our dinner game, Lestalot said. However, we of Dunkelfelder request the right to participate in the questioning and sentencing of those 3 knights. The last thing we would want is for them to receive punishment that do not match the severity of their crime. Anastasius grimaced at the implicit accusation that the royal family would do something so heinous. Before he could speak, however, Lestalot continued. Luckily, this dinner match was performed in the Royal Academy. If we put the matter to rest now, then we can avoid having to involve every Archduke during this Archduke conference. The same goes for the pitiable apprentice knights whom the Sovereign Knights Order incited. Lestalot was soon to graduate, meaning he was fully capable of participating in the next Archduke conference and airing the misdeeds of the Sovereign Knights Order. Misdeeds that had taken place in the Royal Academy where adults weren't supposed to interfere. From there, he could put pressure on the archdukes in the middle and lesser duchies that had participated. If the royal family had ordered this unthinkable act, then they certainly wouldn't want more attention drawn to it. Lestalot was exploiting this fact, which made Handler sigh. He who lives in a glass house, brother. You would not want word to spread that you pressured Ehrenfest into a game of dinner, hoping to cancel Lady Rosamund's engagement, only to ultimately lose. Lestalot was effectively haggling with the royal family while trying to push his own vulnerability out of sight. Handler could only dream of being so shamelessly bold. I recognize Dunkelfelder's request, Anastasia said. Does Ehrenfest have anything to say? Wilfred exchanged a few words with his retainers and replied no. Ehrenfest will obey the royal family's decision. They had resolved to demonstrate their fealty rather than kick up a fuss. I see. Now, with all that has been said, allow me to make one thing clear. If we learn of any further battles for Rosamund, we of the royal family will settle things permanently by securing her ourselves. We will accept no debate. Wait, securing her yourselves? Does that mean taking her for yourselves? And if so, who would that be for? It's either Sigiswald. It has to be Sigiswald because Hildebrand's engagement is sound and Anastasius is not going to take another wife. He's just like Sylvester. Not just Ehrenfest, but everyone present gasped at this announcement. Anastasius continued, Wilfred, you should have thought of a means to avoid this match before you received the challenge in the first place. You are Rosamund's fiancé. You could have spoken to the royal family and fought against Dunkelfelder's demands. By accepting their terms, you have left yourself with no choice but to accept challenges from any other top-ranking duchies targeting Rosamund. Do you understand this? Ehrenfest's accumulating trends, the Royal Academy's dedication ritual, the joint research projects to be announced during the Energy Tournament. With so many accomplishments under her belt, Rosamund's perceived value and popularity were rising drastically. The king had approved of her engagement, but this incident with Dunkelfelder had set a troublesome precedent, one that Anastasius believed would entice other duchies to attempt to claim her. In truth, it had already begun. That the Sovereign Knights Order had managed to persuade lesser and middle duchies was evident enough. It wasn't hard to imagine what would come of all this. You have prevailed this time, Wilfred, but you cannot rely on it happening again, Anastasius warned. Not all challenges will take place in the form of dinner. Whether or not Rosamund stays in Ehrenfest will depend entirely on how you act as her fiancé and the next Archduke candidate. Next Archduke. Next time, you must do better. Wilfred hung his head. As the gathering came to an end, he couldn't help but feel dejected. Immediately upon returning to the Dunkelfelder dormitory, Handler was surrounded by Lestalot and the others. Handler, why did you willingly leave our base? Lestalot asked. During last year's Interduchy tournament, you were praised extensively for having defied Ditter's infamous Lord of Evil. Nobody would believe that you gave up to escape danger. What did you have to gain? At once, a vivid image flashed through Handler's mind. She could see Wilfred, his dark green eyes brimming with worry, his hand so warmly extended. Her brother was right. She had not left their base to flee from danger. I want to go to Ehrenfest, she finally answered. Had the offer come from anyone else, Handler knew she would not have taken their hand. She wanted someone who would fight to protect her, even when there was so much danger to overcome. So you exploited Lord Lestalot's dinner game for the sake of your own love, Corgilette remarked, expressing her understanding. Even as your head attendant, I would never have predicted such a move, my lady. Your growth is splendid. Handler turned to her, taken aback. She wanted to dispute the claim, but she couldn't bring herself to speak. As a result, everyone accepted Cordilette's interpretation as fact. But how? But, love, is that really what I'm feeling? Yes, I would assume so. Hannelore had abandoned her base so that she could take Wilfred's hand, so that she could go to Ehrenfest, but she didn't feel that she could puff out her chest and declare she was in love. Her feelings were something more vague that she couldn't quite express. I'm guessing it's a crush. As she mulled it over, the surrounding apprentice knights began reflecting on the game of dinner. I didn't know that Lady Hannelore wanted to marry into Ehrenfest. If we had even a suspicion, I wouldn't have left her alone in our base. We lost this time due to Lord Lestalot's negligence and poor information gathering. Nobody attacked Hannelore for her actions. Their duchy had tasted defeat, but as far as anyone was concerned, she had achieved a personal victory and obtained the future she desired. Plus, this outcome would still secure them a connection with Ehrenfest. Lestalot was displeased about having lost, but for Hannelore and the duchy as a whole, the game had still proven beneficial. Why did you not tell us sooner? Lestalot asked. Were you colluding with Rosemine? And when did you even begin to have feelings for Wilfred? Hannelore couldn't have told them before the game. Her heart had only changed when she saw Wilfred offering her his hand. She had ended up hiding important information from the others in her duchy, but she had done so entirely by accident. Lestalot himself, on the other hand, had done the same deliberately. That was more problematic in Hannelore's opinion. Well, I did not know you wished to acquire Lady Rosemine until you began taunting Lord Wilfred at our tea party, brother. Not to mention, you are the one who made me resolve to marry into Ehrenfest. Lestalot fell silent. Rosemine had suggested that Hannelore marry Wilfred as his second wife if Dunkelfelder lost, but only because she had wanted to avoid playing dinner entirely. Lestalot had ignored that and accepted the condition, and when Hannelore tried pleading with him to reconsider, he had demanded she be silent. Perhaps, but I did not think you wanted to marry into Ehrenfest, Lestalot groaned. It is one thing to obtain a groom, but Ehrenfest places far too low in the rankings for a Dunkelfelder Archduke candidate. One of his retainers patted him on the back. Unfortunately, the results are what they are. Yes, I know. This is my fault for not thinking that my little sister might surpass me. This is the result that she wanted. He sighed, but he made no attempt to overturn the results of their dinner game. His incessant grumbling was evident ultimately because he knew he would need to send a report home detailing everything that had transpired. His parents would surely chastise him for being soft on his family and not gathering intelligence properly. Hannelore looked at her hand, and only then did she realize she had unwittingly extended her arm. She could remember Wilfred reaching out to her, and as though she thought about the moment when their hands had met, a pleasant warmth spread through her chest. There was such a broad, gentle smile on Hannelore's face that everyone around her took in a sharp breath. Oh, yeah, she's definitely falling for Wilfred. The Saint's Ritual. Lordy, is everything ready? Today I was going to participate in the ritual that Ehrenfest was performing as part of their joint research. I consulted my board of instructions for the umpteenth time. They had been given to me by Lady Muriella of Ehrenfest, with whom I have often discussed Royal Academy love stories. Yes, big sister, I have cleaned myself as instructed and prepared the necessary rejuvenation potions. I was also able to memorize the prayer. The prayer is almost the same as the one spoken during the third-year Divine Protection ritual, is it not? My elder sister asked. Have you not had yours yet, Lordy? Don't tell me you've yet to learn the names of the gods. Ehrenfest Slay Nobles passed on their first day, so if a Josh Brenner apprentice art scholar hasn't managed even that much. She looked exasperated, but memorizing the names of all the gods was no easy feat. I also wasn't keen on her comparing me to the students of Ehrenfest. The third years had passed every single one of their written lessons on the first day since joining the academy. Lady Rosemine, the Archduke candidate leading them, was blazing through her practical lessons on top of that, so using her as the benchmark really didn't seem fair. Yeah, don't be comparing yourself to Rosemine. You are slow to finish your classes, and you cannot even gather proper intelligence, my sister had concluded. Oh, but sister, you failed to gather intelligence on Lady Rosemine as well, did you not? I retorted, looking at with a pout. There was no reason for me to tolerate her brassy remarks when her own efforts had produced so meaningful results. Back when Lady Rosemine was a first year, my sister had attempted to gather information about her, only to find that Lady Rosemine's retainer, Hartman, had exercised complete control over what was accessible. The most one could obtain was lengthy, boastful speeches that announced that amounted to little more than she is the saint of Ehrenfest after all. My sister had tried again during her second year, only to be shooed away by Lady Clarissa of Dunkelfelder, who had asserted that she was Hartman's escort. I continued, though your efforts all ended in failure, sister, I was able to find out what Lady Rosemine's favorite stories and discover her plans for returning her to her duchy. Lord Hartman and Lady Feline told me all. I also learned from a conversation between Lord Wilfred and Lady Hannelore that she is forming bonds with top-ranking duchies by lending them books, and now I am rather close friends with Lady Muriella. Since her first year at the Royal Academy, Lady Rosamund had been buying stories from other duchies at a high price. One of our own lay nobles had wanted to ask what her favorite stories were, hoping to secure as much money as possible, but as the person in charge of acquiring the stories was an archnoble, they had asked me to accompany them. That had marked the beginning of my visits to the library, and from there I was able to gain information from Lord Hartman and Lady Feline. It seems that Lady Rosamund prefers love stories. They are said to be cash cows, though I cannot say why I am familiar with the term. She knows they're going to make a lot of money, that's why. I could tell that Lady Rosamund and I would become fast friends, were we ever to meet. I, too, had a particular fondness for love stories. I was already getting along well with Lady Mariella, a new retainer of Lady Rosamund's, whom Lady Feline had introduced me to. She was especially passionate about love stories, and that was often where our conversations headed. Gathering information quickly fell by the wayside. I needed to befriend Lady Rosamund as well so that I might read Ehrenfest's love stories sooner than anyone else. As much as I enjoyed asking Lady Muriel about what stories awaited me in the next volume, as expected, I much preferred the thought of reading them myself. This year I was lucky enough to be borrowing a volume from Lady Charlotte, and quite early on, I might add. But it wasn't the newest volume, and I couldn't borrow it whenever I wanted. Lady Muriel says the new volume has a wonderful scene where the god of darkness spreads his sleeve at the gazebo where the goddess of time plays its tricks, shielding the goddess of light. When will I be able to read it? Would you please stop sighing about how you wish to wed into Ehrenfest to read new books, my sister said. Accept reality. Ehrenfest has so many honor students and so much attention being drawn to it these days that securing a husband from there won't be easy. Things are not as they were years ago. Perhaps I would have a better chance marrying an Ehrenfest men noble? Mother and father only knew Ehrenfest from when it was at the bottom of the rankings. They would never mention you to marry a men noble from there. Again, stop being so wishy-washy. It is time to go to the auditorium. Fairzair called over Loslan, another apprentice art scholar. Loslan, my big sister, and I were the only students from Jossbrenner due to participate in this joint research. Though reaching this day was by no means easy, my eyes grew distant as I reflected on everything that had occurred. Ehrenfest was a middle duchy that had drifted around the bottom of the rankings for as long as anyone could remember, only to abruptly shoot up after getting through the Civil War. Compared to other duchies, its harvest was steady and growing by the year, proof enough that its lands were readily supplied with mana. Its position at the Royal Academy had also risen steadily over the past 5 or 6 years. Initially, only its first years had obtained better grades, most noticeably in their written lessons, and the other duchies had mocked them for setting standards they wouldn't be able to maintain. Of course, this had all taken place before I joined the Academy, back when Jossbrenner was still ranked above Ehrenfest. Despite the constant jibs from other duchies, some of Ehrenfest's students had started to perform better in practical lessons as well, even boasting larger mana capacities than was expected for a middle duchy. It wasn't long before half of their student population was earning favorable grades, and rumors quickly spread that they were using some new, highly effective mana compression method. Lady Rosamund's attendance at the Royal Academy drew even more attention to Ehrenfest, especially when every single Ehrenfest student in her year passed their written lessons on the first day. She also brought with her a number of new trends, which was interesting in itself. It wasn't always the case that new goods introduced by middle duchies, or middle or lesser duchies, became fashionable. Without the assistance and publicity of greater duchies, most fizzled out as mere curiosities. Sometime later, before socializing seasons, Lady Rosamund took ill and returned to Ehrenfest. She became the subject of mockery at many middle and lesser duchy tea parties, during which participants would don sarcastic smiles and say that it would be oh so nice for her if the greater duchies picked up her trends. And then came Ehrenfest's own tea party, held at the end of the year and open to all other duchies. On this memorable occasion, it was revealed that Lady Rosamund had connections to top-ranking duchies and to the royal family. Prince Anastasius purchased an Ehrenfest hairpin, and Lady Eglantine personally received a jar of this product that made one's hair glossy. Oh, how the middle and lesser duchies were taken aback. Oh, how they panicked. I do not know the details firsthand. It was my sister who attended as Jossbrenner's representative, but it was apparently quite the experience. Most notable of all was when Lady Rosamund collapsed partway through. They had scrambled to gather information about Lady Rosamund, conscious that the interduchy tournament was right around the corner, only to find themselves unable to speak with any Ehrenfest students. The most optimistic among them believed that they might have a chance during the tournament itself. But Lady Rosamund did not attend due to poor health. Atop of that, Ehrenfest's previously barren socializing spot was suddenly teeming with the archdukes of greater duchies, meaning that those of middle and lesser duchies were unable to properly approach. In her second year, Lady Rosamund once again blazed through her class before vanishing. Lady Charlotte took over Ehrenfest's socializing season in her absence. Even during the year's introductory tournament, Lady Rosamund was inaccessible due to the masses. She and Lord Ferdinand were busy handling Dunkelfelder, so Lord Wolfrid and Lady Charlotte hosted the Middle and Lesser Duchies instead. Lady Rosamund then ended up leaving the awards ceremony following the attack and did not attend the coming-of-age ceremony the next day. Despite standing out so much due to looking like a 7-year-old, Lady Rosamund was seldom seen around the Royal Academy. This year, however, she was finally staying at the Royal Academy for socializing season. It was our first opportunity to speak with her. She gave soft, entertained smiles during discussions about books, and faltered with embarrassment when asked about the real-life love story that she was experiencing. But when it came to the negative rumors about Ob Ehrenfest, she always gave sad looks. According to the stories exchanged during the Archduke Conference, Ob Ehrenfest was much harsher on his adopted daughter than on his blood children. Lady Rosamund had apparently spent such a long time locked away in the temple that she could only stay at the Royal Academy for brief stints. It must have been very hard on her. Lady Rosamund denied the rumors, but everyone knew that she had returned to Ehrenfest while her siblings, the Archduke's blood children, had gotten to participate in socializing season. If they were truly seen as equals, then all three of them would have been made to leave. She had to leave because she is the High Bishop. Of course she's got to leave. Do y'all not understand that? So, Lady Rosamund, forget about the temple. I wish to discuss your joint research. What manner of research are you doing with the Greater Duchies? Asked Lady Morenru, an Archduke candidate from Immerdink. She had interrupted Lady Rosamund's conversation about temple rituals to very uncouthly ask to join her research with Dunkelfelder. During last year's Interduchy tournament, an Immerdink archnoble had accidentally attacked Lady Rosamund, a blunder for which they had been thoroughly chastised. Lady Morenru had mentioned during a previous tea party that nobody acknowledged all the suffering Lady Rosamund put Immerdink through, as this was an exceptionally shameless heel turn. Lady Rosamund was not to blame for the many casualties Immerdink had suffered during the Internispefallen attack, nor for their lower position in the duchy rankings after their archnoble was scolded. But as others moved to stop Lady Morenru, Lady Rosamund, who had fallen into thought, suddenly looked up and smiled. As part of our joint research, Ehrenfest will be demonstrating a religious ceremony. Would you care to join? If you can obtain permission from Dunkelfelder, that is. Oh my, you would allow me to? You're being too agreeable, Lady Rosamund. I was exasperated, but the representative of the duchies flocked to join as well. Immerdink's participation had opened a floodgate of sorts, with everyone now convinced that they should also get to take part. Naturally, I made sure to get involved too. Sister, we may be able to participate in Ehrenfest and Dunkelfelder's joint research. Well done, Lorati. Jospringer wasted no time before reaching out to Dunkelfelder, though we received a most unusual response. Play us in dinner, then. I was unsure what the sport had to do with their joint research project, but it was apparently essential. I didn't have the authority to answer a dinner challenge from another duchy on my own, so we consulted our ob. We were told to accept. Our priority was securing ourselves a position in Ehrenfest's religious ceremony. And so we sent our apprentice knights to take on Dunkelfelder. Lady Durrady, it seems that Dunkelfelder wanted to play treasure-stealing dinner specifically. That old variant? Treasure-stealing dinner was so old-fashioned that it had come up only briefly during class. We had never even attempted it during our practical lessons. We ended up facing Dunkelfelder alongside other middle and lesser duchies, but we still suffered defeat. Now our duchy students were so exhausted that we needed rejuvenation potions en masse. This wasn't something we had accounted for. Speed dinner never required so much mana, but it was quite a serious error on our part. Our gathering spot is rather sparse at present, and not many good ingredients can be found there, I mused aloud. We had painfully little to work with, and we would need to invest a lot of our mana to brew the very potions intended to restore it. The apprentice scholars would all make theirs together, but they could not force the apprentice knights to pay them for their efforts. I decided to petition the op for his opinion. After all, these unexpected costs have resulted from his order. He covered the necessary expenses for our rejuvenation potions, but that greatly reduced the amount of money we had available for the interduchy tournament. Thanks to the hard work of our duchy's apprentice knights, Dunkelfelder allowed 3 of us to participate in the joint research. As we had requested, we now needed to deliver permission boards to an Ehrenfest apprentice scholar who would then tell us the details of our participation. Thus, I contacted Lady Muriella. What? I said. We will need rejuvenation potions to participate in the joint research. Indeed, Lady Muriella replied. Lady Rosamund said the ceremony will require mana, so those who do not bring any will surely struggle. This revelation left me quite vexed. We had received an order from our ob and gotten our apprentice knights to work so hard for our sake, so we more or less had to participate in the ceremony. But at the same time, I wanted to avoid using any more mana outside of classes or needing more rejuvenation potions. Perhaps it would have been wise to take after Immerdink and step down the moment dinner became involved? Immerdink had suffered more casualties during last year's Shnitzbefallen attack than any other duchy, leaving them with far fewer apprentice knights than was expected from a territory of their size. It was said that they had simply bowed out, unable to participate in the dinner. Jossbrenner does not have any leeway, as Ehrenfest does, I said. Is participating in this joint research truly worth depleting our mana even further? Lady Muriella looks somewhat confused. I do not know about the leeway of other duchies, but I believe it is worth seeing one of Lady Rosemine's ceremonies. You will come to understand what it means to offer prayers to the gods and to be loved by them in turn. Her green eyes usually sparkled with excitement for love stories, but that emotion was gone, replaced with an uncompromising seriousness. After taking a sharp breath, I resolved to participate in the Ehrenfest joint research. Over 200 people were gathered in the auditorium. The crowd was shockingly large, which made me even more uneasy about the fact that only two other people wore my duchy's cream-colored cape. I reached out and tugged at my elder sister's cape. Sister, will this many people be participating in this joint research? Most Archduke candidates are here, so I imagine the crowd is largely made up of their retainers. There will not be this many participants in practice. My understanding of Archduke candidates being followed by retainers was spotty at best. My sister had served Joss Brenner's last Archduke candidate to graduate, so she had that experience to draw from, but said candidate had gone by the time I entered the Royal Academy, and we had no other here to speak of. Even when working in the castle, I am rarely involved with Archduke candidates. Lady Fairzair, is that not the Sovereign Knights Order? Luslan asked, pointing to the back of the auditorium. At the door leading to the farthest hall where we obtained our staffs. Indeed, for some reason there were black-clad Sovereign Knights lined up there. Several among them even appeared to have been in battle not long ago. They had doubtless recovered themselves using rejuvenation potions or something of the sort, but their damaged clothing spoke volumes. What happened, I wonder? You were the one in charge of this little effort, Lordy, my sister said, looking tense. If you do not have the answer, then how would I? It was impossible to predict what would happen when Dunkelfelger and Ehrenfest were involved. Thinking about it, gathering this many people in the auditorium for joint research was abnormal to begin with. Ehrenfest and Dunkelfelger students dispersed through the crowd, making a loud announcement. The ritual will take place through the door in the farthest hall. Participants must display their permission form. Those without one will not be allowed in. Please line up one by one. I saw Lady Felina and Lady Muriella among them. Klassenberg the First was the first to enter. As they had no Archduke candidates present at the Royal Academy, 5 of their apprentice arch scholars were participating instead. They all stopped right outside the door for some reason, which was unusual to me. The Archduke candidate Dunkelfelger II was also participating in the joint research, as they were inside already. Jawanko III followed after Klassenberg, but then there was a commotion. What do you mean I cannot enter? I am Lord Ortwin's guard knight. Those without permission forms will not be receive entry. Guard knights are no exception. The guard knight was now brimming with anger. Do you really think anyone will... Those without a form will not be allowed inside, came a voice as those of the Sovereign Knights Order stepped forward. Stand down. They were unmistakably displeased and staring daggers at the disruptive student. Lord Ortwin's guard knight bit his lip, then backed away to rejoin the other knights. I never would have thought that retainers wouldn't be allowed to follow their lord or ladies into the farthest hall. What are they thinking, separating guard knights from their charges? I asked, gripping my own permission form with unease. Before I could ponder the matter further, however, I spotted another student being led away from the entrance, still gripping her form. Given her light violet cape, she must have been from Ahrensbach. Apprentice knights from Ehrenfest and Dunkelfelger were waving the girl out of the auditorium. As guard knights cannot attend the ritual, we cannot allow those who may pose a threat to go inside, one said. This isn't right, a girl still cried. I'm not malicious in the slightest. It's Lady Rosemine. This is all a plot by Lady Rosemine. You will receive a chance to state your case. The Sovereign Knights Order took the girl from the apprentice knights, and she left the room with a stiff expression. What happened there, I asked. Luslan quietly shook her head. I do not know. However, if I were to extrapolate from her statements, I would assume they have something that can detect dangerous individuals. They need to ensure the students are safe without their guard knights, my sister whispered, and I suppose the best approach is to remove all those with malicious intentions. None from Klassenberg or Jawanko have been refused entry. Her eyes wandered to a nearby group of Lesser Duchy students. Some of them spread many negative rumors about Ehrenfest during tea parties and wore their envy on their sleeves. I complained about needing so many rejuvenation potions, but that wouldn't be considered malice, will it? My heart pounded in my chest as I waited my turn. Each participant was stopped at the entrance, as we had already seen, but only 2 of the 5 Ahrensbach apprentice scholars were turned away. I wonder what is on the other side of that door, I said. Everyone stopped and were passing through. The door was open, but a complex-colored sheet of mana obscured whatever was beyond it. Soon enough, it was my sister's turn to enter. She stopped in place like all those I had before her had done, and then she was gone. Next, Lady Feline called. I advanced, clutching my permission form in my chest. The Sovereign Knight's orders stationed on either side of the door were exceedingly terrifying, but I took care to keep my eyes forward. This was no time to be gazing down at my feet. I passed through the film, saw the inside of the farthest hall, and starved as everyone else had. What's going on? Nobody told me so many members of the royal family were going to be here. My first sight upon entering was the royal family lined up within a yellow translucent dome. In front of them was Lady Rosemine wearing her high bishop robes. I froze in place, so stunned that I thought my heart might stop. Only when someone beside me asked for my permission form was I pulled from my stupor. I passed the board to Lady Clarissa of Dunkelfelger, still somewhat dazed. This is Shutsaria's shield, Lady Rosemine explained. It denies entry to all those of malicious intent. As guard knights cannot enter the ritual, or attend the ritual, we having to filter the students like so. Please go inside and greet everyone. She then stepped to the side, revealing Lady Eglantine, Prince Anastasius, Lady Adolphine, Prince Sigiswald, Lady Nahalache, whatever, and King Troraqual himself. Never in my wildest dreams had it occurred to me that I, an archnoble from Middle Duchy, would one day interact with the royal family. King Troraqual did not have a Grucheshite, so while the duchies on the losing side of the civil war were often accused of him of being unfit to rule. Still, his royal presence could not be denied. I resisted the shaking of my legs and slowly knelt before the king. I am Luridy of Drossbrenner. May I pray for a blessing in appreciation of the serendipitous meeting ordained by the harsh judgment of Avaglib, the god of life. You may. His voice was kinder than I expected. Feeling a bit relieved, I gave the blessing and then my greeting. I am honored from the bottom of my heart to have this opportunity to meet you, Zent Troraqual. You have my thanks for your assistance on this day, Luridy. Never had I expected the king to speak my name and express to me his gratitude. It was far too great of an honor for an archnoble to receive. Had Lady Rosemine not been there to urge me to my feet, I actually might have cried. Lady Luridy, Hartman will guide you from here. I stood up at Lady Rosemine's prompting and saw Lord Hartman clad in the robes of a blue priest. His attire made no sense. He was a noble who had graduated from the Royal Academy. I had just managed to adjust to my shock of seeing the royal family, but now I was starting to feel dizzy all over again. Lord Hartman, I said, that outfit. I am Ehrenfest's high priest, one who serves Lady Rosemine, our high bishop. Furthermore, I am not the only one wearing robes. Lord Wolfrid and Lady Charlotte are as well. Today is a special occasion. Under normal circumstances, only priests and shrine maidens dressed in blue robes may witness Lady Rosemine's dedication ritual. Most others would mock Lord Hartman's temple robes, but he was looking down at them proudly. His expression was exactly as I remembered it from last year. The same smile that he wore when extolling Lady Rosemine's virtues. I could imagine him gleefully visiting the temple, but that was unthinkable to most nobles. I shook my head to dispel the images. Wait here, if you would, Lord Hartman said, having led me to where my elder sister was standing on the top of a red carpet. The top-ranking duchies were closest to the center, where there was a circular space, with the lowest-ranking duchies being farthest away. It wasn't a complete circle, and the vacant area was presumably where the royal family would stand once everyone had greeted them. It appears that Ehrenfest Archduke candidates really do all go to the temple, my sister whispered after Lord Hartman went to fetch Lustlond, who had entered after me. Looking around the room revealed that, as Lord Hartman had suggested, Lord Wolfrid and Lady Charlotte were both dressed in blue robes. The clothes weren't being borrowed for the sake of appearances either. The fit was perfect, even for two Archduke candidates who were still growing, and thus didn't look like the first time being worn. I nodded in response to my sister and replied in an equally low voice, putting aside the rumors that Ob Ehrenfest treats his blood children better than though there is no mistaking that they all perform religious ceremonies. All of a sudden, the stiff breeze swept through the room. I turned to see that someone had been repelled by the shield protecting the royal family. It was now being carried away by Ehrenfest and Dunkelfelger's apprentice knights. I hold no malice, the rejected student declared. Perhaps your venom is directed at me rather than the royal family, Lady Rosemont said. Either way, I must ask that you sit this one out. We cannot afford to have those who may be a threat in a certain ceremonial hall without guard knights. So Lost Lot and my sister had assumed correctly. Those who refused entry held malice toward either Lady Rosemont or the royal family. But how could anyone prove such emotions? How could they reject participants with such confidence? Is this truly okay, I asked? What if those suspicions of malice turned out to be false? Those who were outed would have been wrongfully accused in front of the royal family. So you say, but they were clearly knocked back by the shield, Lustlond said. Among the top-ranking duchies, only 2 from Arensbach were refused entry, and they were both clearly hostile to Lady Rosemine. This person was from a losing duchy. I expect that they will not be the last rejection we see today. And she was right. Many others who were subsequently knocked away from the shield were from duchies that had fallen down the ranks after the Civil War or spent tea parties complaining about their lands being ravaged. I assumed they were antagonists to the royal family, though hopefully they do not resent Lady Rosamund for revealing those negative feelings. After several more students were refused, the lengthy entrance procedure finally concluded. Ehrenfest and Dunkelfelger's apprentice knights left the room, leaving the two Dunkelfelger Archduke candidates at the entrance. The apprentice scholars then closed the door and stood among us. Please move to the center, Lady Rosamund said. One by one, those of the royal family moved to the center of the carpet. Lady Rosamund waited for them to take their positions, then dispelled Schutzaria shield. The ritual will now begin, Lord Wolfrid announced. He explained the process, and only then was I made aware that the purpose of the ritual was to collect mana from everyone as an offering to the royal family. In what way is this ritual a part of our joint research? Every duchy is going through a mana shortage, and this is why they ask of us? Were we all tricked? It seemed that I wasn't the only person feeling this way. Everyone started exchanging looks with those around them until Lady Charlotte offered an explanation. This joint research began due to students from both Ehrenfest and Dunkelfelger receiving many divine protections from the gods. Through a common thread between our duchies, our regular performances of ceremonies that offer prayers to the gods, we have established the theory that prayers and rituals are essential to obtaining divine protections. At that, all those who had wished to complain closed their mouths. Everyone had known about Ehrenfest's third years obtaining multiple divine protections, but not that it had any relation to ceremonies. In practice, one lay noble had received the protection of an element she did not have an aptitude for, and one mid noble had ended up on the elemental. My elder brother and sister respectfully obtained 12 and 21 divine protections due to performing religious ceremonies in Ehrenfest. Ehrenfest Temple, Lady Charlotte continued. This is just how it feels to me, but I can now brew using only 70% as much mana as before. Lord Wolfrid added, I sincerely believe that this ritual will prove essential to our mana-starved world. And that was coming from someone who had actually received 12 divine protections. As he implied, needing less mana to brew was effectively the same as increasing one's capacity. Lord Lestelot of Dunkelfelger, who was still standing by the wall, spoke next. Many of you saw our duchy perform a ritual and obtain blessings before the games of dinner we required you to play. We have confirmed that said ritual greatly increases one's strength and speed. That, too, has been a result of this research. In other words, Dunkelfelger's frightening strength during our games of dinner was in part due to the blessings from the gods they had received from their ritual. I couldn't help but blink in surprise. Lord Hartman leisurely made his way to the center of the room, holding something that looked a lot like a bell. The first Zent of Jürgen Schmidt was a high bishop, he began, in a clear, resounding voice. During that era, it was normal, expected even, for Zents and Obs to offer prayers to the gods. It is Lady Rosamund's wish that by participating in this ritual, you will all feel the power of the gods more closely and come to rethink your opinion of the temple. She also hopes that at least some of you will obtain more divine protections. Instinctively, my eyes flitted about the room, searching for Lady Rosamund. She was standing quietly by the door, having dispelled Schutzaria shield. Her desire to share the knowledge she had obtained with us all so that we could acquire more divine protections was beautiful to behold, especially when she would have gained so much by monopolizing it. I now had a better understanding of why Lord Hartman was so insistent on calling her the Saint of Ehrenfest. Oh, yeah. The dedication ritual shall now begin, Hartman announced. Please kneel where you are and place your hands on the red carpet. Then you will need to repeat the prayer stated by Lady Rosamund, the High Bishop of Ehrenfest. Those who had been sitting nonchalantly now knelt and pressed their hands against the red carpeted floor. The royal family did the same, as did Lord Wolfrid and Lady Charlotte after moving from the center of the circle to the edge. Soon enough, the only people standing were the Dunkelfelger Archduke candidates, Lady Rosamund by the door, and Lord Hartman at the center of the room. Then there was a sudden loud clanging of a bell. The High Bishop shall now enter, Lord Hartman declared. On cue, Lady Rosamund started toward the shrine, her every step exuding majesty. From where I was positioned, I could see her head on. Her white robes made her stand out from the sea of colored capes and swiftly brought the word tranquility to mind. I could see that her eyes were set on the shrine. Nothing else had her attention. In contrast to her white robes, Lady Rosamund's dark hair looked more striking than ever. It was the perfect backdrop for her hairpin, decorated with such magnificent rainbow face stones, which sparkled like the brightest stars. Never before had I seen such a wonderful hair ornament. It really spoke to how much she was loved by her fiancé. Oh, fortune, bless me with a man who will give me such marvelous face stones. My sister often told me to keep my head out of the clouds and focus on the real world. But I was grounded enough already. I didn't doubt that I would one day need to marry whomever my parents chose for me, but that was precisely why I wanted to dream now while I was still able. Though the only person who can empathize with my feelings is Lady Muriella. As I thought back to our enjoyable discussions about love stories, Lady Rosemary reached this empty space at the center of the room. Then, while looking up at the shrine behind me, she raised both hands in prayer to the gods. It was said that raising both hands and one's left leg while praying was the best way to get closer to the mighty supreme gods of the endless skies, and that placing one's hands on the ground where offering gratitude was a way of approaching the eternal five who ruled the mortal realm. Simply hearing about these forms of prayer had not been enough for me to truly understand them, but now seeing Lady Rosemary assume their posture, it was all startling falling into place. Dagrel, Lady Rosemary chanted, her voice young and gentle, holding her staff aloft in her right hand while gazing intently at the shrine. At once her staff transformed into a sizable chalice that was identical to the one Geduld held on the shrine, even down to the complex engravings. Everyone inhaled at once, then came a single whisper, Geduld's chalice. In the extreme quiet of the room, even those small words reached every ear. As I was in Lady Rosemine's grade in practical classes, I knew that her upbringing in the temple had equipped her to make the divine weapons and equipment, but I had never expected her to be able to create the divine chalice on top of that. A chalice is neither a weapon nor a piece of armor. Where in the world did she learn the spell to morph her staff like that? Can it be learned at the temple? As I was staring in wonderment, my older sister took a sharp breath. I had already seen Lady Rosemary produce a circular shield and give blessings while playing the harpsichord in class, so perhaps I was more prepared for this than others. My sister always rolled her eyes at my reports and called them exaggerated, but surely she understands now. I was telling the truth all along. Hartman assisted Lady Rosemary in sending the charged chalice on the floor. It was far too big for her to carry on her own. Then they both knelt. Lady Rosemary disappeared from my view, but I could hear her voice as she began a song-like prayer. I am one who offers prayer and gratitude to the gods who have created the world. I recalled that we had been told to repeat after her and did just that. I am one who offers prayer and gratitude to the gods who created the world. Our chants were all over the place at first and not at all synchronized. It must have been quite hard on the ears. Everyone finished, and once silence returned, Lady Rosemary continued. O mighty King and Queen of the endless skies, O mighty eternal five who rule the mortal realm. As we all mimicked Lady Rosemine's consistent tone and speed, our chanting became increasingly unified. Soon it felt as though not just our voices, but our feelings were one. The sense of collaboration really warmed my heart. O goddess of water flew train, O god of fire Leidenschaft, O goddess of wind shoot Saria, O goddess of earth Geduld, O god of life Eviglade. By the time we had spoken the name of the last pillar, our voices were in beautiful unison and carried all the way to the shrine. I could feel an indescribable sense of unity, and then the world around me began to shiver. It was like something was being drawn from our bodies. What? An instant later, I started to feel mana being sucked out of me. I did not know what to do. It was my first time having it happen outside of my control. It was draining through my palms, so removing my hands from the carpet would probably stop it, but I could not risk interrupting the ritual. I made no significant movements, merely watching my hands until the red carpet began to gleam. Our mana was flowing to the chalice as waves of light. I could feel the mana of those behind me sweep past as it moved to the center of the room, steadily accelerating, and as the mana moved faster, it drained from me more quickly. We honor you who have blessed all beings with life, and pray that we may be blessed further with your divine might, concluded the prayer, and with those words, everything became bright. I gazed up to see where the light had come from, and saw that the chalice was the source. What? It's shining? No sooner had people started crying out in surprise than a pillar of light shot up through the chalice and pierced through the ceiling. It was red, the divine color of Geduld, and reminiscent of a warm hearth. What is the meaning of this? The king exclaimed, putting what we were all thinking into words. I expected a portion of our mana flew to some unknown point in the Royal Academy, Lady Rosemary replied in a calm voice. This always happens with rituals done here. It does not happen in Ehrenfest, so I expected it as something unique to the Academy. Lord Leslock concurred, saying that the same happened with Dunkelfelger's rituals. Our rituals produced mainly blue light, but I could see that this was red. He was still positioned near the wall. That would be because the dedication ritual is a ceremony for filling chalices with mana, Lady Rosemary noted. This red light is all of our mana being offered to the gods. Is it not beautiful? I nodded vigorously. It really was. This is a true divine color. In my eyes, the seasonal divinity colors had always been something to consider when choosing clothes or decorating rooms and nothing more. The lack of choice they offered had even frustrated me when trying to decide what to wear for my coming-of-age ceremony. Now, however, this was my first time seeing a divine color look so radiant. Not even red elemental face stones compared to its beauty. That should be enough, sister, Lady Charlotte suddenly cried out. We all turned to see that she was standing. Lady Rosemary stood up as well, whereupon she announced the ceremony has concluded. Everyone please remove your hands from the floor. I expect some are beginning to run low on mana. I did as instructed, and the feeling of unity disappeared all at once. It was like waking up from a dream. At the same time, I was struck by an intense wave of exhaustion, and it became worryingly clear that I was short on mana. My body felt heavier, and I was too dizzy to move. It took all my willpower to just remain kneeling. I even heard several people behind me collapse. "Everyone, thank you for participating in the dedication ritual," Lady Rosamond said. "Those of the royal family and the Archduke candidates here today are used to supplying mana to foundational magic. But this must have been especially hard on the archnobles. We have prepared rejuvenation potions to reward those of you who have given us your valuable mana." Hartmut the potions. Lord Hartmut gave a brisk nod and then got to work. Lord Wolfred and Lady Charlotte did the same, moving without hesitation. It seemed that none of them were particularly tired. The royal family and Archduke candidates were all similarly stable, but several archnobles were in a state where they could not even kneel properly. To think that the royal family and Archduke candidates performed such a draining ceremony on a regular basis, I never knew. I was familiar with the fact that each duchy's archducal family needed to supply their foundational magic with mana, but I hadn't known what that entailed, or how draining it was to use so much mana at once. These potions should recover your mana more effectively than the ones used in lessons. Of course, those who are wary of poison are not obligated to accept them. You may use one of your own rejuvenation potions instead. Lord Wolfred and Lady Charlotte each took and then drank a potion, indicating that they were safe to consume. Lord Hartmut then extended the box in which the potions were stored to Lady Rosamond, who similarly drank one before returning the now empty vessel. "These rejuvenation potions were taught to us by another and are not something we wish to make public," Lady Rosamond explained with a mischievous smile. "As such, I must ask that you drink them here and not save them for later. Otherwise, I may be scolded for distributing them. We will be retrieving the bottle soon." I was enthralled with the idea of a rejuvenation potion more effective than those we were taught to brew in the Royal Academy. But when I looked at my sister, I noticed she was wearing a hard expression. Sister, is something wrong?" I asked. "Do they truly expect us to drink these strange concoctions when we know not what they contain? This may be a trap of some kind." It was a very astute point, one that hadn't even crossed my mind. As the retainer of an Archduke candidate, she was so much more alert than I. Perhaps that was why she always called me wishy-washy and the like, that I hung my head a little ashamed. The box in his arms, Lord Hartmut started asking who wanted one of Ehrenfest's rejuvenation potions, starting with the king at the very center of the circle. I assumed this was a formality more than anything else. The very idea of a member of the royal family accepting a potion from another duchy without any attendant or guard knights present was unthinkable, but as so was distributing them to others without first offering one to the king. Lord Hartmut was no doubt expecting a refusal, and yet the king said that he would indeed take one. Seeing his outstretched hand sent a stir throughout the crowd, the royal family was constantly on guard against ambushes and assassination attempts, and, unlike the lower-ranking duchies agonizing over the mana shortage, the sovereignty had an abundance of resources. The king had no real need to accept the potion, which meant that this was purely a show of trust. I cannot believe that Zent Charlcoal places so much faith in Ehrenfest. We were surprised, and it seemed that those from Ehrenfest were as well. Lord Wolfred and Lady Charlotte were both staring at the king in shock. Lady Rosamond, however, seemed entirely unmoved. "Zent Charlcoal," she said, "these potions recover mana in bounds, but they do have very little impact on one's stamina. I expect any feelings of tiredness to remain." Lord Hartmut nodded in agreement, then added with a serious expression that Lady Rosamond's own potions alleviated exhaustion as well. It seemed to me that they were the only ones acting as their usual selves here. Perhaps following the king's example, the other members of the royal family accepted potions too. I couldn't say for certain, but it seemed to me that Prince Stitcheswald hesitated briefly before drinking his. Klassenberg's apprentice scholars were glaring at the box of potions. Now that the royal family had accepted the offer, they were socially obliged to do the same. Still, if the apprentice scholars truly were suspicious, then they were within their rights to refuse. Many of you here today used a great number of rejuvenation potions to play the dinner needed to participate in this ritual. No, Lady Rosamond said. And yet we have taken even more mana from you in the process of our ceremony. To make up for that, we have prepared these potions. If you are wary of poison, then you may drink your own, but please decide quickly. She looked past the Klassenberg archnobles to the students still wobbling on their knees at the far end of the circle. I especially wish for those potions to reach the archnobles of middle and lesser duchies who are understandably struggling the most. To think she would worry more about the bottom-ranking duchies than the top-ranking ones. Upon seeing the concern in Lady Rosamond's eyes, Klassenberg archnobles buckled under the pressure and accepted the potions they were offered. From there, the distribution process continued a lot more smoothly. Dunkelfelger's apprentice scholars took some of the potions and chugged them without delay. "Allow me to help, Lady Rosamond." Lady Clarissa looked thrilled to finally be able to move, reached for the box to return her empty potion bottle. She then collected the empty bottles of the others who had finished drinking. Lex told Hartmut distributed potions to Jwanko, Glassenmeyer, and Hochschlitz, whatever. Ehrenfest. These rejuvenation potions seem to recover mana at an extraordinarily fast pace. Would you not agree? Prince Anastasius remarked, his tone questioning. Those who had yet to drink theirs immediately looked to Lady Rosamund for an answer. Our apprentice knight said the same. I thought you prepared them yourself, the prince said. This time his voice was sharp, enough so that I started to tremble, even though he wasn't speaking to me. But Lady Rosamund just gave a troubled smile. I need to drink another kind of divination potion, and so I'm not too familiar with this kind. My siblings and our retainers discussed which potions recipes I could use, and decided that these were optional for the ritual, so they are what I made. Does that mean Lady Rosamund could brew several kinds of divination potions, despite being an Archduke candidate? I already knew from our classes together that she was skilled at brewing, but never had I ever thought her capable of such a truly impressive feat. Lord Wolfrid suddenly interjected, causing the Jawanko Archduke candidate to flinch. These potions have been distributed for you to recover the mana spent during the ceremony, not to be used for research. It seemed that Lord Ortwin had attempted to smuggle one of the potions out of the room. He looked at Lord Wolfrid, who was regarding him with a teasing smile, then after pulling an awkward face, downed the potion in one go. After seeing the royal family and the top-ranking duchies accept potions, I was resolved to take one even if my sister tried to stop me. Jostbretter's supply of rejuvenation potions had been largely drained after our dinner match. I saw no reason to turn down a free one. Besides, we used our mana for Ehrenfest, did we not? This was only fair. I gazed at my sister, silently posing the question to her, and she responded with a curt, resigned nod. When it came time for Jostbretter to accept or refuse the potions, we both took one from Lord Hartman. Lostlawn did the same. Ehrenfest was currently distributing its third box of potions. They had evidently come well prepared, and what I saw inside caused me to gasp. It was positively brimming with bottles. To prepare this many potions, Lady Rosamund and the others must have expended a lot of resources, mana, and of course time. There are just so many, I murmured to myself. Is Ehrenfest not at risk of exhausting its resources trying to keep up with Lady Rosamund's limitless compassion? Lord Hartman raised an eyebrow at me, turned to look at Lady Rosamund, and gave a proud smile. Ehrenfest is not at risk, no. Our duchy is enriched by the compassion of our saint and grows more prosperous by the day. Despite being Ob Ehrenfest's adopted daughter, Lady Rosamund was filling her duchy's mind of mana as a high bishop, teaching other duchies about ceremonies so they could obtain divine protections themselves, and preparing rejuvenation potions for those who had offered up their mana. Not just anyone could say that they had such achievements to their name. Lady Rosamund was a true saint all along. I had always assumed that Lord Hartman's tales about her were exaggerated, but now I knew better. As I moved to drink the potion he had given me, I reflected that I should have listened to him with more reverence. This potion really does act faster than the ones I'm used to. I wonder how it was made. The potions that Ehrenfest had distributed were incomparable to those we learned to make in class. I could already feel my mana coming back. Are these made with ingredients from Ehrenfest's gathering spot? I asked my sister. They certainly explained why Ehrenfest is not wanting for mana. A supply of these would allow them to fill their entire duchy. I gave a firm nod. Such potent means of recovery would make it much easier to replenish one's duchy and create more rejuvenation potions. However, Lustlawn interjected, while they do recover mana, they do very little to ease exhaustion. I moved my arm around a little. As she had said, my body was still quite weary. Considering that you might find yourself too exhausted to move, perhaps normal rejuvenation potions are more effective? My sister nodded. These would be perfect for nights in the heat of the battle, or for a person who wishes to brew something they would otherwise lack the mana for. Her evaluation gave me a good idea of what whoever had designed the potions prioritized the most. They were presumably doing some strange research that required an immense amount of mana. Immediately after finishing their potions, the royal family and the Archduke candidates were able to move around freely. But the archnobles from lesser and middle duchies were still struggling. Having noticed this, Lady Rosamund opened and closed her hands, then touched her neck. Was she testing something? Is recovering, but not your stamina, correct? She asked. My mana has recovered as well, but I would not want you all to be stuck sitting on the floor, so... She made her staff and then chanted, Strike Kolkin to create Flue-Trained staff. The chalice had not produced any light to begin with, the face stones on this staff already sparkled green. And now Flue-Trained staff, came dazed murmurs. Lady Rosamund had formed one divine instrument after another. Lady Rosamund shyly cast her gaze downward. I must rely on Flue-Trained staff to heal so many people at once. My inexperience is a great source of embarrassment. It seems like the wrong thing to be embarrassed about. A small part of me wanted to say as much, but the knowledge that Lady Rosamund was about to bless such a large crowd as though it were nothing stifled my voice. I was convinced that nobody in Jurgensmith could wield the divine instruments as readily as she. Normally, one would not even consider using mana to ease another exhaustion. Nor would one bless so many people at once. May Hellsmear's healing be granted, she said, and green light spread from the face stone atop her staff. Some of it formed a pillar that reached toward the ceiling like during the previous ceremony, while the rest rained down on us. As I closed my eyes, feeling my exhaustion melt away as I enjoyed the warmth of Lady Rosmine's mana, then came a whisper. Master Nora. It was barely spoken at all, but with everyone else silently bathing in the light, it carried effortlessly across the room. Master Nora? She's a subordinate of Wind, I believe. I was still memorizing the names of all the gods, but I recognized Master Nora. She was the goddess of wisdom, from what I remembered. But as I wondered what she had to do with Lady Rosemine, I heard an energetic voice call out, I concur, Lady Hannelore. Alas, I do not understand enough to say the name. Or say the same. I opened my eyes instinctively and saw Lady Clarissa Dunkelfugger launching into an impassioned speech. I received exactly the same impression, she said. Lady Rosemine's actions clearly paralleled Master Nora, who was permitted by the gods to use all their instruments. Lady Rosemine had stopped her blessing, perhaps out of an overwhelming surprise. My knowledge of the gods extended only as far as what were taught in our theology lessons, but still, I wasn't familiar with the story Lady Clarissa was referring to. Most others were surely having the same thought. I do not seem to recall such an idea being expressed in the Temple's Bible, Lord Hartmouth said, watching Clarissa with doubtful eyes. It is spoken of within old Dunkelfugger books. Lady Clarissa's assertion was quite quickly affirmed, not by anyone from Dunkelfugger, but by Lady Eglantine. She told us how Master Nora was the daughter of the god of life and the goddess of earth, then concluded that she was just like Lady Rosemine. Perhaps it really was the case. Lady Rosemine had enough mana to wield the multiple divine instruments, and the intelligence to have been first in class since she started the Royal Academy. Plus, if one were to believe Lord Wilfrid, then she had also created all of Ehrenfest's trends. As I considered this, Lady Eglantine giggled. I spake in jest, of course. Please do not look so troubled. Lady Rosemine gave her a thoroughly troubled look. Anyone would be troubled to be compared to a goddess, Lady Eglantine. It was a very reasonable point, in my opinion. How was one supposed to react to such words from a member of the royal family? Hartmouth stepped forward as if to protect Lady Rosemine, then thanked Lady Eglantine with a smile. I could only sigh in awe of how expertly he dealt with the situation. Truly he was an Archduke's candidate's ideal retainer. I see that wonderful lords and ladies attract wonderful retainers. Today's ceremony had proven dramatic enough to make me reconsider several things I thought were common sense, but all in all I returned to my dormitory feeling very satisfied, of my stamina and mana fully recovered. Okay, hold on. We got... Dang it. 38 more pages. Someone worthy of caution. Prince Anastasius, Prince Sigiswald has arrived. I entered Anastasius' villa, ready for our private conversation, to find that he was already kneeling before me. He had started acting like my retainer ever since his marriage to Eglantine was decided. I accepted it as I understood that he was emphasizing his position to our retainers and to the others. Brother, he said, Dragar, the goddess of time, has... We are the only two here, Anastasius, I noted, interrupting his greeting and making my way to the seat I was offered. No need for all the formalities. I'm more interested in what you have to say. What did you discuss with the Ehrenfest Archduke candidate Rosemine? You thought it best to discuss things with me before telling Father, did you not? Just the other day, Anastasius had attended a tea party for those affiliated with the library. There he had privately spoken to Rosemine of Ehrenfest, and now it seemed that there was something about their exchange that he wished to tell me. Important reports were generally given over dinner in the royal palace with Father present, but on this occasion I received a personal invitation. I was on tenterhooks awaiting his next words. Brother, do you recall the blessing that rained down upon Eglantine during our graduation ceremony? Anastasius asked. Of course, how could I forget? The blessing in question had caused Anastasius' retainers to argue that he was meant to be the next king after all. My own retainers to say that Eglantine was fated to be the next king's bride, and the sovereign temple to proclaim that she should immediately be raised to queenhood. In short, it caused no end of trouble. As it turns out, Anastasius said that blessing was performed by Rosemine. Don't tell me, was she following instructions from Ferdinand again? Roblet, the sovereign knight commander, was particularly suspicious of those two. I never really understood it, but the man controlling Rosemine was apparently behind all of this after all. His goal had presumably been to divide the royal family right after Anastasius and Eglantine's union while simultaneously involving the sovereign temple. She claims that the blessing simply came out while she was praying for Eglantine's happiness and singing the song of the dedication whirl. It seems rather incomprehensible. I do not understand it. Fear not, brother, nor do I. That was hardly reassuring. The more I thought about it, the more suspicious Rosemine seemed to be. She always completed her lessons with terrifying speed and then promptly returned to Ehrenfest, so even those in her grade rarely saw her. After finishing her last class of the year, she would spend each day of her remaining time in the academy visiting the library. She would not even participate in the award ceremony despite having come first in class twice in a row. As far as I was concerned, she was an entirely unknown creature. In her first year at the Royal Academy, Rosamund took over royal magic tools through incomprehensible means and got involved in a fight with Dunkelfelder. Then she gave a blessing to Eglantine during her graduation ceremony despite not having offered one to Adolphine or to me, the future king. During her second year, Rosamund gave black weapons to apprentice knights without permission and used a strange shield to protect only those from her duchy in the attack on the award ceremony. These events spurred Robert to investigate the secrets of where Ferdinand was born, and from there he began warning us of the threat the man posed. He said that Ferdinand was controlling Rosamund and searching for an archive hidden within the Royal Academy's library, one that could only be entered by those of the royal family. So, did you learn what Rosamund or Ferdinand is trying to achieve, I asked. No, but I asked her to serve as High Bishop for your Starbind ceremony and grant you a blessing. She agreed with some conditions. I furrowed my brow while Anastasius began listing her requirements. It was hard to believe that anyone would make demands of the royal family. It might have been more reasonable coming from a duchy that had contributed to the Civil War, but from an opportunistic neutral duchy such as Ehrenfest, it seemed a bit shameless. Does she understand Ehrenfest's political standing, I wonder? In the past, we had seen little reason to pay attention to Ehrenfest. It was known as a backwater duchy with very little influence and even less cause to draw the royal family's attention. Now, however, it had far too much sway. I wanted its people to understand their place, but be a bit more humble to the royal family and attempt diplomacy with the duchies that actually contributed to the Civil War. Still, Anastasius said, if you can secure a blessing of your own, then fewer people will criticize you. That certainly was true. By showing the populace that the blessing Anastasius and Eglantine had received was from a human, not the gods, I could start to reshape public opinion. The sovereign high bishop had been so egregiously, agonizingly smug when pushing for Eglantine to become the next Zent, saying that she had received a blessing straight from the gods themselves. How would he react in light of these new developments? The sovereign temple had been getting too cocky for its own good as of late, so hearing about the shame he had brought on himself during the Bible investigation had worked to ease my stirring heart. Having another means to put them down will be highly beneficial for us all. I nodded and said I agree that a blessing will move the discourse along. As this is your idea, I shall entrust negotiations with the sovereign temple to you. Understood. Next, there is an underground archive that requires 3 keys to be opened. Hortensia, an archnoble being assigned to the library, had apparently allowed them to open the librarian's previously sealed rooms. Inside, they had found the keys to the underground archive. Are you referring to the archive that only the royal family can enter, I asked. At the moment, we do not know for certain. Solange is the only remaining librarian from before the Civil War, and as a med scholar, there were many places she was not allowed to enter, and much she does not know. Our only choice was to go there and see for ourselves. However, with the security this tight, it made sense to assume that the Goethe was inside. Hortensia wishes to investigate the archive as soon as possible. To that end, we have selected her, Hannelore of Dunkelfelder, and Rosamund of Ehrenfest as key holders. I crossed my arms. Why grant the Ehrenfest Archduke candidate the key when everyone was so suspicious of her? Anastasius, this does not seem to make sense, I said. Should the key not be given to Solange rather than Rosamund? As a med noble, Solange would not be able to reach the archive. One must be an archnoble or higher, it seemed. Would you assign 2 of your archnoble retainers for this? Hortensia had apparently asked the royal family to send those we could trust the most, as the facility was clearly important to us. Anastasius had declined, however, as we simply did not have the manpower to spare. An archive that well protected must contain valuable documents, I said. Only certain individuals can enter. I would not mind assigning my retainers to manage the keys if all they must do is open and close the archive whenever I intend to visit. There was no need to involve Archduke candidates with a facility important to the royal family. The archive was likely meant to be a secret. It was best kept under my control as the next king. Brother, the archive does not necessarily contain the Goethe. Why do you say that? I asked. It exists for the royal family, but the former arch-librarians made it so that we could not enter. According to Roblet, the first to learn of the archive, the previous librarians had devised a plot before their execution to ensure that the king would not be able to enter the archive. They had apparently pulled a trick of some kind to prevent the knights from entering the rooms. Solange informed us that after rising to the throne, the king continued to visit the library each year around the time of the Archduke Conference, Anastasius explained. Hortensia also reported that she remembers Prince Waldefrid planning to visit the library after his coronation. I see, after his coronation, I replied, nodding to myself. That makes it a lot less likely that he was visiting to obtain the Gruderscheit. The coronation of the next king is intended to show the obs that it has passed on. First, past members of the royal family entering the underground archive was enough to confirm its importance back then, but it was hard to tell what it contained or what it offered for us those in the present. Furthermore, Hortensia more than the archive to be opened. The library's magic tools have been drained of mana and are in a terrible state. And she wants the assistance of anyone who can resupply and investigate them, librarian or no. Would it not trouble you to send 2 of our retainers to work in the Royal Academy's library permanently, not just temporarily to open the archive? Naturally, it would be difficult to send 2 of my retainers on such a long-term job of unknown importance. They were providing critical support to my life and work. It was also possible that these new efforts would be in vain, as we had no guarantee that the archive would lead to the Gruterscheid. To me, it seemed a task best left to the retainers of other royals. What if you and Hildebrand were to send 1 retainer each, I asked. Do you have any who could stay at the Royal Academy? As you know, on top of my work in the palace, I am supporting Hildebrand with his duties in the Royal Academy as the Royal Academy's overseer. I am busy enough that I cannot spare a retainer. I would ask for more if possible. Last year, the adults royal had been too busy doing important work in the palace to oversee the Royal Academy. As a result, the young Hildebrand was assigned to the position immediately after his baptism. Up until that point, the overseer had existed purely as a figurehead meant to remind those present who was in charge. Yet there had been the appearance of a tarnished Perfon, the students using black weapons, the Bible investigation, and the attack during the award ceremony. It was a sequence of events too serious for Hildebrand to manage himself, which was why Father's retainers had suggested that Anastasius take over the role this year. They argued that they could remain at the Royal Palace and go to the Royal Academy when an incident occurred, and that Eglintine's new position as a professor would allow him to stay abreast of any goings-on. Of course, Hildebrand had been quick to protest the idea, having seeming to find that his duties were being taken away from him. His retainers had expressed similar reluctance, as they believed that replacing the young prince would make him appear incapable of some way. That was understandable, as we ultimately decided that Hildebrand would continue to oversee him as the overseer, but that he would contact Anastasius when matters got out of hand. It was a necessary precaution, as we all anticipated another incident between Ehrenfest and Dunkelfelger. Hortensia is the wife of the Sovereign Knight Commander, Anastasius says. She understands that the sovereignty does not have the leeway to send any more librarians. Hence her suggestion that the 2 Archduke candidates serve as key holders. Instead, considering their work for the library committee, there are no other students who will give mana to the library while they are so busy with their classes. This so-called committee had been supplying the library's magic tools of mana since before the discovery of the archive beneath it. The other students had witnessed this already, as nobody would bat an eye about them continuing to work with the librarians. Naturally, Hildebrand was excluded from consideration. It was fine for a prince to offer his mana whenever he deigned to visit, but the library could not summon him at its own convenience. As far as Hortensia and Solange were concerned, Rosemont and Hannelore were the only options. I understand the circumstances, I said, but I still think that we can reconsider the Ehrenfest Archduke candidate. It is one thing to supply mana, but to serve as a key holder. Have you forgotten Robert's warnings? Her duchy is dangerous. Before I could say much else, an ordinance flew into the room. Another soon followed, then another after that. They were from Eglantine, Hildebrand, and Hortensia respectfully. Apparently, the very girl we were discussing had just supplied some crucial information. She had given a detailed explanation of who could enter the triple-locked archive and said that it contained documents the royal family would do well to read. Some Archduke candidates can enter, I asked. What does that mean exactly? Rosemont clearly knows more than Solange, but why? If she had known this much to begin with, then she would have said so when the caves were first discussed. She is terrible at hiding things, Anastasius assured me. I will assume that Ferdinand gave her this information, perhaps after she revealed that she is becoming a keyholder. Indeed, it would have taken about this long for her to write to and then hear back from Ferdinand, assuming they were corresponding by letter. To think a backwater like Ehrenfest, a bottom-ranking duchy at the time of the Civil War, would know such things, I mused. Rabba is correct, we have every reason to consider Ferdinand suspicious. If their people are willing to supply us with information, however, then we have no reason to refuse them. Let us consult the odds at once. Perhaps one of them has entered the archive before? If members of the country's many archducal families were also able to enter the archive, then perhaps they would provide us with further intelligence. I decided to consult Klassenberg's and Dunkelfelger's obs. Brother, if what Rosemont says is true, and these documents are best read by the royal family, then I think you should visit the archive with us, Anastasia said. I have taken the lead thus far because Rosemont is friends with Eglantine, but if the information describes how to be king, as we suspect, then it would be best that you read it. I can tell that my little brother wished for us to see these documents right away and clear any suspicion that Ehrenfest was planning a coup. He even seemed to feel sympathy for Ferdinand, who was under Robert's scrutiny. I pondered for a moment. Anastasius knew more about Ehrenfest than I, and not even Robert's accusations had given him much cause to doubt Rosemont. My understanding is that Ferdinand was on poor terms with the mother of the current Ob, Ehrenfest, and was sent to the temple as a result. I said, perhaps he is offering us this information as a show of gratitude. Now that we have sent him to a greater duchy instead, he may have reevaluated his opinion of the royal family. I was trying to keep Anastasia's feelings in mind, but on the inside I was more suspicious of Ferdinand than ever. Robert suspected that he was part of a royal branch family born in a villa known as Adalgisa, that he resented having been sent to the duchy and was aiming to secure the Gruterscheid for himself. I checked a record of Adalgisa in the royal palace and found that the previous Ob Ehrenfest had taken a child from there to raise as his own. There was no name written, but the date had made it clear that this child was Ferdinand. We had worried that Ferdinand might cause another civil war, but wedding him into Arensbach had made it impossible for him to take the throne. Robert wanted the key to Adalgisa to investigate further, but father had refused, telling him the matter was resolved. Perhaps I should grant the key to Robert and get him to investigate further. We needed to look into Ferdinand as well, but I thought it might most wise to start by meeting this Rosamund girl. Perhaps then I would understand why Hortensia and Anastasius were so confident about her being a key holder. I shall do as you suggest and meet Rosamund myself on our way to the underground archive, I declared. I decided I could make time these 3 days from now. Oh, and do inform Hildebrand about this. The king did technically make him the Royal Academy's overseer. This matter was too serious for a young child to bear, but we had been given him his position to begin with. Who were we to reject him for wanting to carry out his duty? Having the young Hildebrand in attendance would also sure to lower Rosamund's defenses, even if only a little. And I wonder what they know. My curiosity was not limited to Rosamund herself. I was eager to see what Ferdinand knew and what he intended to tell us. My father wanted the Gruterscheid to legitimize his kingship, and securing it would allow for easy control of the political stage. If we had any leads, then I was resolved to follow them. Though the process was admittedly bothersome, if this archive did not direct us to the book, I would consider it a waste of time. I personally had no attachment to the Gruterscheid. Jürgen Schmidt had been without one for as long as I can remember, and I was confident that I could rule without its influence. Indeed, we were managing fine already. I was willing to make some sacrifices to maintain this peace. Yes, I understood that there could be nothing better than obtaining the Gruterscheid, but we did not have it, and the royal family needed to rule Jürgen Schmidt either way. I was the son of a king without the Gruterscheid, and I needed to prove that we could survive even without its aid. That was my duty as the next king. Oh, come on, another one? Ugh! My voice! Headache-inducing reports, 3rd year. Oh, dear God. Ob Ehrenfest, here's a list of attendants charged with light crimes that warrant fines and nothing more. Put it over there. Thanks to the warning and intelligence we had received from Matthias, a student of the former Veronica faction, we had managed to imprison the nobles who had given their names to Georgine. Actually detaining them had proven a real mess, according to Bonifacius, who had taken charge of the affair. Some had set their estates on fire the moment they saw the Knight's Order arrive, while others had blown their own heads to pieces to keep their memories from being read. I don't know what they were planning, but it didn't seem like they were having tea parties or celebrating the start of winter, Bonifacius said. All 10 or so of them were desperate to hide whatever evidence they could. You know, I think Matthias's report really saved our hides here. Initially, we had intended to wait until after the Lord of Winterheart to start our purge. Bonifacius maintained that this would have been too much too late. Most of our targets had taken their own lives, leaving behind almost no evidence to speak of. But we had imprisoned plenty of criminals outside of Gerlach's winter mansion. Now there was so much cleanup to be done, but we barely had the manpower. Carr said, "How will we fare hunting the Lord of Winter?" I asked. Carrying out the purge first had cost us a lot of rejuvenation potions and offensive magic tools, and decreased the number of knights we had at our disposal. In other words, we'll need to attempt the hunt in a severely weakened state. The phase stones from Rosamund and mandatory contributions from the imprisoned scholars should make it just barely possible, he replied, his face dark with exhaustion. He had tirelessly devised a plan to make our hunt a success on top of cleaning up the aftermath of the purge. It seemed that sending Rosamund a load of empty face stones after she had mentioned being overwhelmed with mana had paid off tremendously. On top of that, we had ordered some of the scholars charged with lesser crimes to create the offensive magic tools we would need for the hunt. They would repay their fines through labor and mana contribution. The high-quality ingredients from the Royal Academy helped too, Karstedt continued. It's going to be close, but it looks like we'll manage the hunt once again this year. That's a relief. How about the temple's dedication ritual? Have you heard anything from Cornelius or the other guard knights participating in the training? The temple's religious ceremonies had a very direct impact on this next year's harvest. We had previously left them to Rosamund and Ferdinand, but neither of them were here this time. To make things more complicated, the remaining blue priests didn't have much mana to begin with, and there were fewer of them than ever. The purge had been performed before the dedication ritual also meant that the pre-baptism children had already been sent to live in the temple orphanage. I'm told that Hartman is being fairly proactive, since Rosamund entrusted everything to him in her absence. Cornelius was grumbling about having been wrapped up in it all. According to Karstedt, Rosamund's guard knights were being made to imitate blue priests. Ceremonial robes had already been prepared for them. When he came to the training grounds, Daniel told me they were hanging their heads against the wall, or banging their heads against the wall, that is teaching Angelica the prayer for the dedication ritual, he continued. Still, we want them to succeed as soon as possible. Angelica and Cornelius will provide key firepower against the Lord of Winter. Ferdinand and Eckert's departure meant that Rosemine's guard knights were now crucial to the fight. Striking a balance between the ceremonies and the hunt was going to be important. Ehrenfest, may I have a moment? Asked Lebrecht, one of Florencia's scholars, as he entered the room with several boards in hand. His red hair, which was similar in color to Karlstad's and tied firmly behind his head, must have been a Elias gang trademark. His dark brown eyes were always calm and collected. I couldn't remember seeing him get emotional even once. I looked up from my desk. Lebrecht, have you all finished going through the reports from the Royal Academy? Preparing for the purge and everything after it had made me so busy this year that I delegated responding to the reports from Florencia. Lebrecht was probably here to confirm that they were done as per usual. No, Lady Florencia fainted while reading them, he replied. Can I ask you to handle this batch, Ehrenfest? Is she okay? I demanded, standing up on instinct after hearing his dry announcement. This wasn't the time to be reading reports from the Royal Academy. I was way more concerned about Florencia's health. In stark contrast to my surge of emotion, Lebrecht indicated that I should sit back down without even twitching his eyebrow. Lady Florencia has stepped away from her work and returned to her room, he said. A doctor is currently seeing her, but the diagnosis will not come just yet. I should also note that going to see Lady Florencia will not do anything to improve her condition. Her health is best left to the doctor and her attendants, so I would ask that you instead resume your seat and complete her workload for today. As her scholar, I am likewise unable to do much for her while she is ill. May I ask permission to assist you as you go through the reports? The purge had cost me some of the people who usually worked in my office, so having Lebrecht's help was greatly appreciated. I started distributing work to Florencia's scholars. And now, here, Lebrecht said, the report for the Royal Academy. From what I remember of yesterday's reports, Rosemine went on a rampage after getting annoyed during some tea parties and decided to hold a dedication ritual in the Royal Academy. She received a summons from the royal family and intended to request permission to use their shrine. I've yet to even read these, but I can already feel my head aching. I wanted nothing more than to bend these reports and save myself the anguish, but they surely described Rosemine's meeting with the royal family. Leaving them unread wasn't an option, so I accepted them from Lebrecht. My hope is that the royal family refused to let her use the shrine, and that was that. But given what happened with Florencia, I'm guessing they gave her permission. Indeed, the situation has taken an unexpected turn. Having no other choice, I started reading the reports. The first was fairly normal. Dunkelfelder students had trained enough that they could now obtain blessings on their own, and at their request, a strict delineation was being made between the joint researchers and their helpers. They're letting us use the shrine hall as long as we bring the ceremonial tools we need from Ehrenfest. Once the temple's dedication ritual is over, please send Wolfried, Charlotte's, and my ceremonial robes alongside the other things we'll need, including offerings and the like. If you ask Hartmut, he should take care of everything right away. From Rosemine. I reread the report a few times, then muttered, this isn't too bad. His interest was now piqued. Karlstad gave the board a look as well. It will take us a while to send over everything she was asking for, but the royal family are letting them use the hall, and apparently for free. Pretty forgivable. Yep, this is much better than we expected. Neither the royal family nor the sovereign temple is causing any problems. I don't even feel the urge to grab my head and slam it against the table, which is rare after reading one of these reports. But as I started to relax, Lebrecht flipped over the board and said, Hubris is a slow and insidious killer, Ehrenfest. There was text on the back as well. P.S. I've invited the royal family to join us for the dedication ritual. Their presence should help to keep the participants in line. Plus, I want the royal family to experience a real religious ceremony. Their jobs would get a lot easier if they can earn some more divine protections. Prince Anastasia said that he would consider it. Wait. Didn't we explicitly tell her not to get involved with royalty? Too late! I put a desperate hand on my forehead. I'd spoken too soon. We'd anticipated that the royal family might add a problematic condition to using the shrine, but not that Rosemine would willingly involve herself with them. And she did it out of goodwill, I muttered. She did say that their job should get a little easier, Lebrecht said. She must have acted out of pure kindness while thinking it was actually beneficial for everyone, much like how she saved the children of criminals partially with the future of our duchy in mind. I groaned a little. His analysis was harsh, if you thought about it, but he wasn't wrong. I'd accepted Rosemine's proposal to save the children for the sake of Ehrenfest's future, considering how our population had taken a hit after the purge. But the last gangs found that hard to swallow. After all, the former Veronica faction had put them through such misery and for so long. Lady Rosemine seems to believe these agreements are mutually beneficial, Lebrecht went on. But does she not pay any mind to the impact they have on everyone else? This may help us in the roles of the royal family, but will the children of other duchies think? To be honest, what happens to the royal family is of no concern to Ehrenfest. All they ever do is push us in unwanted directions. I remembered Ferdinand saying that whenever Rosamund became involved with someone, she couldn't help but invest herself in their well-being. Evidently, she was now close enough to the royal family for this to apply. She was in too deep. Well, what is there to do? I pondered. As the royal family is now involved in this joint research, we cannot cancel it on our own. We should summon Hartman for the time being. Only he will be able to confirm whether we can send the necessary implements for the dedication ritual to the Royal Academy, and how long it will be before that can be done. I nodded and then sent Hartman a summons. Once the ordnance disappeared from sight, I started reading the reports from the other kids. Professor Gundolf scolded us, saying that we Ehrenfest students have no new interesting ideas. He is indirectly telling us to involve Lady Rosamund from Mariana. I made several suggestions, but Drwonko improved on them and came up with better things. It feels like the results of our research are being taken away from us, from Ignaz. Rosamund's reports were all about the joint research Ehrenfest was doing at Dunkelfelder, whereas those from Wilfried's and Charlotte's apprentice scholars only discussed our joint research with Drwonko. It was easy to guess where each person's interest lay. Seems like the joint research with Drwonko isn't going so well, I said. There's no helping that, as research requires a variety of skills not measured through written classes. Imagination, speed in producing results, a keen eye for whatever information to conceal, and what to give others, and so on. Our apprentice scholars may have finally begun to earn worthwhile grades in their written lessons, but this is still a heavy weight for them to carry. Lebrecht had dismissed their shortcomings as inevitable, but Karstad gave a more sympathetic look and crossed his arms. If the burden's too much for them, don't they need advice more than anyone, he asked? Drwonko wanted to collaborate with Rosamund specifically from the very beginning. How about the scholars ask her for some good ideas? She's bound to have some. I'm not so sure, I replied. They may need advice, but we want that gremlin involved with as little as possible. Otherwise she'll cause problems in Drwonko as well as Dunkelfelder. Have the scholars think on their own for a bit. This is an opportunity for them to get some important experience. I could tell from the scholars' reports that they didn't want to rely on Rosamund, that they wanted to advance this research themselves. They were eager to make these accomplishments their own, precisely because this duty had been placed in their hands. Oh, do you not mind if our duchy's joint research with Drwonko fails? Lebrecht asked. This is a matter between students, and Rosamund said we couldn't have refused Drwonko even if we wanted to. No matter how poorly things might go on our end, Ehrenfest will be none the worse for it. This is a valuable opportunity for them to learn from their mistakes. Trial and error, people. After a moment spent in thought, Lebrecht said that that shall be our reply. I decided to leave the writing to him, and it was then that I did notice the letter among the boards. What's this? I asked. A letter to Hartman from his Dunkelfelder fiancé. It arrived with the reports. I thought it best that you read through it, considering that it has come from another duchy. During more normal circumstances, personal letters would be sent directly to their intended recipient, but the purge and such had spurred us to read all messages coming in from the Royal Academy. Personally, I felt a little bad about reading someone's private correspondence, but it was my duty as the Archduke. Even though I doubted that Hartman's fiancé was in bed with Ahrensbach, I needed to know for sure. Never in all my life have I been more grateful for the serendipitous meeting ordained by Evaglave's harsh judgment. Her hair, blessed by the god of darkness to be as alluring as the night sky, danced through the air with power overflowing. Her golden eyes sparkled with the goddess of light's blessing as she stared down her foe. Our Lady, whose mortal form has received the direct favor of the supreme gods, raised but a single hand, and in it appeared the greatest masterpiece that Vukanif, the god of smithing, has ever produced. Crackling of blue lightning, her heroic figure radiated the light of all the summer gods, and into mine eyes burned the true passion of Angrif, the god of war. Or, no, wait. It was not just Angrif. You're the one who should be waiting. What the heck even is this? At first I'd assumed that Hartman's fiancé was using the traditional flowery template that was often followed when writing to one's partner to be, but that wasn't true at all. Despite it reading entirely like a love story, her letter did nothing but shower Rosamund with praise. She didn't even attempt to compliment Hartman himself. I tried to skim the rest, but even that became unbearable. Lebrecht, are you sure this is from Hartman's fiancé? There is no mistaking it. Clarissa is detailed as the sender. As it turned out, Lebrecht hadn't read the letter. He'd checked the recipient and sender and nothing more. Was I the only one who felt the striking contrast between his coldness and Clarissa's gushing? What kind of person is Clarissa? I asked. Is she, dangerous? I met her during last year's interduchy tournament. She is an arch scholar from Dunkelfelder who wants something more than to marry into Ehrenfest and serve Lady Rosamund. Her union to Hartman is good for the future of our duchy, I must admit. I did not expect my son to become romantically involved in the Royal Academy, considering how cold he can be, but that is another matter. I merely blinked in response. Hartman had never come across as cold to me. As far as I was concerned, he was a loyal retainer of Rosamund's, whose extraordinary passion seeped through each of his reports. Excuse me, Aberenfest, came Hartman's voice as we continued to examine the letter. I am here as requested. He had made his way here immediately after receiving the ordinance, and threw the blizzard on his high beast, if the lingering flecks of snow in his hair were anything to go by. Sorry to call you over during these busy times, I said. Rosamund wants to know how the orphanage is holding up. I assume that, like the Lord of Winterhide, a lot of your plans have been disrupted. The kids sent to the orphanage had been raised as nobles, and children or not, they were presumably showing a lot of resistance. It was hard to imagine the youngest of them crying for their parents. Or it wasn't hard for that. Hartman smiled. You may rest easy. Under my watch, no problems will occur in the orphanage. As we speak, everyone there is living in peace without exception. All right, that is good to know. Pre-baptism kids can't be counted as nobles, but the more that survive this, the better. It felt as though the entire duchy had been thrown into chaos, so I was relieved to hear that at least somewhere was peaceful, even if that somewhere was also under Hartman's strict watch. Hartman, here's why I summoned you, I said, handing over one of the boards. This is from Rosamund. She wants you to prepare for religious ceremonies. I then gave him the letter, and this is from your fiancée Clarissa. Hartman began reading the board without a moment's hesitation. His bright orange eyes grew wider and wider, and his hands started to tremble as he muttered, This can't be. Lady Rosamund is performing the dedication ritual in the Royal Academy? I can't believe it. Oh, why did I have to graduate last year? To think I am unable to watch her ceremony with my own eyes. I am a failure of a retainer. That reminded me. The last report Hartman had sent was from 3 days ago. So much had changed since then, it was no surprise that he was so taken aback. I would only say that if you were unable to complete the preparations in time, I said. More importantly, when is the temple's ritual due to finish? We need to send Rosamund a reply. Think you'll be able to give her what she needs? Lady Rosamund wills it, so I shall ensure that the temple's dedication ritual finishes promptly. All the required tools will be prepared, and I will deliver them to the Royal Academy myself. He was as skilled as ever, or at least as fanatic about Rosamund. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught Lebrecht wearing a look of exasperation. Contain yourself, Hartman, he said. Lady Rosamund has not summoned you. She has asked only for the necessary tools and robes. This intense attitude of yours ill befits a retainer serving the Archducal family. Pray tell, where do you think you are? Stand down and cool your head. He then turned to me with a sour expression and continued, My apologies. He's the youngest of my sons, so I was too lenient while raising him. Wow, that's his dad, okay. I can't wait to see that. I think his obsessive loyalty is more to blame. You seem surprised, but Hartman always acts like this when Rosamund is involved. Did you not know? My wife informed me that a law has changed over the past few years, but I did not realize he had become this foolish. There is nothing wrong with being invested in one's lord or lady, but it pains me to see him lose control. He sighed once, then returned to his usual flat expression. From that point on, he took great pains not to look at his son. Meanwhile, Hartman only had eyes for the correspondence I'd given him. He looked between the board and Clarissa's letter, thinking something over pretty seriously. The father and son, who made no effort to look at each other, were the cause of the air in my office to become kind of sharp. Hartman, that's everything I needed you for. We'll inform Rosamund that you'll get her what she needs for the dedication ritual, I said, sending him away. Then I turned to Lebrecht. This is my reply to Rosamund. You take over the rest. I'll go check on Florencia. Understood. Hartman really was scarily good. He finished the temple's dedication ritual in no time at all, then started coming to my office on a daily basis. During each visit, he gave a detailed report on how much of the required tools and such had been brought to the castle, while also advising Wolfram and Charlotte's retainers about the ceremonial ornaments to be worn during the ritual. But all that was just an excuse. Last year, when Ehrenfest was ordered to bring the Bible for inspection, Lord Ferdinand went to the Royal Academy personally as High Priest to manage the temple's belongings. With so many temple goods now being requested for the dedication ritual, is it not clear that another such manager will be needed? As the High Priest, that is my duty. Hartman was an adult, meaning I would need to get the royal family's permission for him to visit the Royal Academy. I'd been refusing him, trying to save myself the trouble, but it was hard to argue when he was using Ferdinand as a precedent. The cultural perspectives on religious ceremonies has been on the verge of shifting since Lady Rosamund obtained so many divine protections in her practical lessons, he continued. The pillar of light that formed when she mimicked Donkervogel's ritual with Leidenschaft's spear was similarly informing the masses of the importance of divine instruments and rituals. If we are to produce the instruments once again, then we must have the proper authorities overseeing them. I intend to accept all of this responsibility as the High Priest. Hartman's non-stop offensive was really wearing me down. I was impressed that Rosamund was still able to tolerate the guy. She definitely had more patience than me. Not to mention there is much that reports alone do not convey, Hartman continued. Should we not be using every opportunity to visit the Royal Academy and gather intelligence ourselves? By bringing the necessary tools and participate in the Royal Academy in the dedication ritual as High Priest, I will even have an opportunity to speak with the royal family. I guess the royal family letting Hartman into the Royal Academy can only benefit us. It wouldn't cause me any problems, at least, and any time he spent in the Royal Academy was time not spent being a pain in my neck. Still, I was so very tired of putting up with his daily appeals that I shooed him away, saying that I would ask the royal family for their permission. Everything else was up to them. The royal family has permitted Hartman to enter the Royal Academy, but they have several conditions, Lebrecht announced, the relevant board in his hand. But that was the least important part of his message. Hold on, I cried. Did you say a moment ago that the king is participating in the dedication ritual? Why? I thought it was just Prince Anastasius. Yes, Rosamund had said that it was best for the royal family to experience rituals, but who would have expected this? Nobody. Give me a break. It certainly is unprecedented for the Zent to participate in the joint research of students. I wish I could forget ever having read this. Is there not some way we can cancel the project entirely? This is all a surprise, to be sure, but now we have even less of an out. Lebrecht replied as dryly as ever. At a time like this, Karstedt would normally be sharing in my torment, but without him here, there was nowhere for my emotions to go. I never thought I'd envy Karstedt having to go hunt the Lord of Winter. I wish that I was in his place, far away from these reports. Being in the heat of battle was sure to be less of a headache than dealing with all this. The Zent is joining in the ritual, I grumbled. The Zent! Something is going to happen there without a doubt. Indeed. Not being able to touch the Royal Academy was maddening. Why were adult royals getting so involved when adults weren't supposed to interfere? And what had been the point of ordering Rosamund not to engage with the royal family? No matter how much I thought about it, there was nothing Ehrenfest could do. Our only option was to see Hartman off and beg him to keep anything bad from happening. An update on the dedication ritual has arrived, Ob Ehrenfest. This one is from Hartman. He wishes to report to you personally and has thus requested some of your time tomorrow. I'd heard that Hartman had returned right before 6 bell and intended to spend the rest of the day getting everything back to the temple. That was his responsibility, so I didn't mind having to wait a bit longer for his account of events. The fact that he hadn't come to me right away likely meant that nothing serious had occurred, so I picked up his report for today without feeling too worried. About 80% of the report described Rosamund's divinity as she performed the ritual and how her holiness had been proven to many duchies at once. 10% was a list of which duchies had been blocked by Schutzaria's shield and the dangers they posed. The rest described how the royal family had thanked us, as well as Hartman's own frustrations about being unable to accompany Rosamund to the library. Lebrecht, are there any other reports, I asked? This one mentions Schutzaria's shield being set up in front of the Royal Academy shrine, but I don't see any explanation as to why. He handed me a new board, which I then looked over. It was from Ignaz, one of Wolfried's apprentice scholars. The dedication ritual was a success. Rosamund made it so that neither the Sovereign Knights Order nor the Archduke Candidate's Guard Knights were permitted to enter, but we were able to ease everyone's concerns using Schutzaria's shield, from Ignaz. They used Schutzaria's shield to get rid of the Sovereign Knights Order and their apprentice knights? The report implied that everything was fine, since everyone had understood their reasoning in the end, but I wasn't so convinced. I could feel an unpleasant pang in my stomach as I picked up a report from Charlotte. Rosamund made 2 divine instruments from her staff. I saw it with my own eyes and still struggled to believe it. Uncle can do it as well, apparently. Is this normal? I feel as though my sister is misunderstanding something. Also, light shoots up into the sky whenever religious ceremonies are performed in the Royal Academy. It happened for Dunkelfelder as well. If these ceremonies become more commonplace, then perhaps Rosamund's abnormality will not stand out as much from Charlotte. What is happening over there? Not even Hartman's report had mentioned Rosamund using 2 divine instruments at once. Maybe only Charlotte had noticed, or maybe it really was normal in Rosamund's cohort. Or to Rosamund's cohort. I couldn't determine the truth of my own, so I turned to the next report. It was from Charlotte's apprentice scholars. The Zent expressed his gratitude to us. Now we can say with all certainty that every duchy has its eyes on our research with Dunkelfelder. I will do my best to ensure that our work with Trawanko is not seen as lesser by comparison. If you can provide an update on our research with Ahrensbach, then please do. We have been unable to find out much about it. From Marianne. It wasn't hard to see that Marianne's comparative spirit was ablaze. She knew that their work with Trawanko couldn't compare to the research being done with Dunkelfelder. She wanted to know how things were going with Ahrensbach. Unfortunately, I didn't really know myself. As much as I'd like to help her, that research is about making magic tools more efficient, I said. All I know is that Ahrensbach, apprentice scholar, is taking care of the schematics while Rosamund is actually doing the actual brewing. The research was more of a personal matter between Raymond and Rosamund than a duchy-wide collaboration, so we didn't get many reports about it. The schematics and prototypes will be presented during the Interduchy tournament. It was possible that Ferdinand had seen them already. Is it truly okay for you to be so in the dark about this joint research of Ehrenfest? I'm not leading it, Ferdinand is, and with him keeping an eye on things, there shouldn't be any problems to speak of. I thought back to my half-brother, who was always agonizing over how to contain Rosamund. I could guess that he too was sitting with his head in his hands right now. It was actually pretty nice to think that he was suffering alongside us, that we could share this connection even when we were so far apart. I will say as much to Marianne, Lebrecht said, and handed me another board. Here is a report from Lady Rosamund. We got to use the mana left over from the dedication ritual to help the Royal Academy Library. The magic tool that might as well be its foundation was just about to run out of mana, so we got there just in time. I made sure to fill it well so the library should be safe for some time now. From Rosemine. My face clouded over. Karstedt had since returned from the hunting the Lord of Winter, so I said without even looking up from the board, "Tell me, Karstedt, is this supposed to be a report on the dedication ritual?" Karstedt read the board over my shoulder and then said with a frown, "She mentions the leftover mana, so yes, I'd assume so." As always, Rosemine was off in a world of her own. Her report about the dedication ritual was almost entirely devoted to the library for some reason. "Surely there are more important things for you to worry about, Rosemine." "I support your position, Aberenfest," Lebrecht interjected, "but a collective analysis of the reports we have received confirms that the ritual ended safely without any rebukes from the royal family. We can expect no major incidents in the lead-up to the Introductory Tournament." Karstedt and I glanced at one another. He shrugged and shook his head, to which I nodded. The dedication ritual might have ended up without incident, sure, but, well... I sighed, then gave Lebrecht a look of complete seriousness. "If you truly believe that, Lebrecht, then you don't understand Rosemine. Of course she's going to cause more major incidents before the Introductory Tournament." I was sure of that much, but I could never have guessed that someone would challenge Rosemine to a game of dinner, hoping to secure her hand in marriage when she was already engaged. As the old adage went, for as long as Rosemine was in the academy, headache-inducing reports were inevitable. Yay, I'm done! Okay, that's funny. That would be cute to see. What is up with the whole dinner? These guys are completely obsessed with dinner. Oh boy. Oh God. Oh boy. These two are so silly. Anyway, I'll get to work on editing this, and I'll see everybody in the next one. 2 hours long, good lord!